let me blast off. Where were we? Where were we? Where was I? Where was I? Bro, where is Hideo Kojima in the world? He's like hanging out with Robert Pattinson and shit. I always see him doing some stuff, and I'm like, why not with me? Do stuff with me, Hideo. I love you. I freaking love you. Is your fingy healed yet? Yeah, it's totally healed at this point. I mean, there's like still, like there's a little bit of a scarring that you can see, but it's healed beyond that. You don't game, that's why? Well, Death Stranding 2's coming out. Dude, I will say I have Death Stranding 1 on my Steam Deck, and as you guys know, I played it a bunch way back in the day when it first came out, and I never actually finished it. And I wanted to get back into playing it, but it's such a long climb, like such a long and arduous climb, both literally and figuratively, to like get over the hump to get into the game. It just kind of kills me a little bit. The Steam Deck is why you don't read books. That's true. All right, let's do it. Light news, drama, react, Lord. We got it all. It's Sunday, Funday. I also downloaded this game that, because I'm so easily manipulated by my TikTok feed, I downloaded this game that everyone has been saying, everyone's been saying is like one of the greatest games of the year. It's a puzzle game called like Blueprints. And everyone says it's like unlike anything they've ever played before. No, it's not. Expedition 33. Kojima said testing for DS2 had too many playtesters that liked it. He says he likes a 4 out of 10 enjoyment ratio. That's so weird. You need a notebook for that one. You have to take notes on everything. Oh my God. You have to take notes? Homework? The fuck? Okay, well, I'll try it. I'm a dumbass who can't solve puzzles. Anyway, we'll see. Some people are saying maybe gaming is back on the menu, and I'm one of those people. You literally need a pen and paper to play that game, but it's amazing. Steam had a note-taking system in it. Yeah, I saw Carnage talking about it, and he said that Steam actually created a note-taking system specifically for the game. He thinks it's one of the best games he's ever played. He thinks it's one of the best games of the year. This year's got some bangers. Northern Lion gave up on it. If the bald boomer gave up on it, how the fuck am I supposed to play it? He's brilliant. He's way smarter than me. This is what he does. Why are you playing that old news when Expedition 33 is going to be game of the year? Expedition 33 isn't it? Expedition 33 is like, it has like a real-time event that within the turn-based, right? It's got QTE, but it's like turn-based. Brother, Northern Lion is only 5 years older than you. Yeah, I know, but he is like brain age-wise, he's much, much older. Like the vibes he puts out is much, much older, I think. Ironic because I talk about politics and he plays fucking games. Why do you think we have such a major audience crossover? I am Unk too. No question about it. Okay? I'm Unk all the way. Northern Lion also is Unk though. And it's interesting because he gets Unk status while literally playing video games. Think about that. He gets Unk status while playing video games. I have Unk status while I'm talking about politics. Like, talking about politics is already automatically Unk status shit. I met a Turkish last night on my Uber drive home from the rave, and we vowed to bring Erdogan down together. Cheers for siblinghood across nations. Good luck, chatter. Yeah, I saw this ad on Twitter. It's amazing. Yes, he was detained. Tremendous juices. Some say the best. I sucked the memory of a cyberpunk playthrough out of him. We let him go in the belief that he was parasite-free, as Baron Tickson would say. Lol. Bulbous orange, real orange tick. Because he's the Unk who helps me relax my brain before rotting him with politics for 8 hours. I watch all of his YouTube videos. He's a comfy streamer. He's someone I watch to vibe out from getting information dumped on your stream for days. I don't want to listen to the news because it's too much. I agree. Well, it's Sunday, so we'll probably hit both. You'll get a little bit of news. What is this? You'll get a little bit of news, and then you'll also get a little bit. Oh God, this was I think this is right after I got back from Japan. Right? Look at my hair and shit. God, remember when in the 90s playing video games was riding your brain and watching news was the healthy thing to do? Yes, I have not seen the articles, but I've heard some noise about this woman in Georgia, Adriana Smith, that's being used as an incubator because she's brain dead, and Georgia law requires the doctors to keep her alive against their family's wishes. Yes. I will be making an appearance on Noah's fundraiser stream later today. What is this? What do the Uyghurs say about China? For all tours of Xinjiang, contact what? Old Road Tours. Does Puyi like Hassan? Yes, I'm in Georgia and it's crazy. Bro, I don't know if I'm going to dive into this right now. Anyway, what is this? Top floor of my daughter's apartment building blown off just now in St. Louis. Tornado. Surely the answer is more deregulation. I have not played the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 DLC chatters. I have not. Yeah, I saw this. This is crazy. Look at this shit. Whoop. Sucked it out, dude. Goddamn. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if this is because the tornado was so severe that it like doesn't matter and like all buildings. I'm not super caught up in like building safety codes and stuff. I don't know if this is a consequence of like how devastating the tornado was, or rather the building safety standards in general. And it could be a little bit of both. High rise literally made out of cardboard. I can't tell from this image anyway. I would have to I can't tell from this this video regardless. I would have to read into it. I live in STL. This tornado was not that bad. This is the builder's fault. But I will say this much. It's probably fantastic. Shaking. It's probably fantastic and really good that
everything's shaking. Is that
not only do we have not only have we defunded the NWS and NOAA, so we can't really figure out the flight path as well as we used to for all of these things. Okay, not only have we done that on the one hand, on the other hand, you know, it's good that all the housing is deregulated anyway. So what's the expectation here? Oh, also we're working on dissolving FEMA too. When you do that, that's the triple Monty. Like you can't figure out where the tornadoes hit. On the one hand, we're pumping that big beautiful oil and that big beautiful clean coal, right? We're pumping it as hard as we possibly can. So that's good. And that's obviously accelerating anthropogenic climate change, right? Carbon emissions are a significant factor in the world, both cooling and also simultaneously getting hotter. And that is changing weather patterns. It's making things erratic, right? We got clean oil, clean coal, clean all the way. Then we're also defunding the aspects that are supposed to be warnings, right? Like because those guys are gay and woke. The scientists themselves turn around and say gay and woke things like, hey, maybe we should limit our carbon emissions. Like maybe we shouldn't be doing the stuff that we're doing because it feels like the world is the climate is changing at an alarming rate in a way that will make it uninhabitable in like the next 20 to 30 years. And then you're like, nah, that's gay, that's woke. What are you, a scientist? Ew, yuck, Pol Pot style. Everyone that wears glasses is getting into the kill pile. So we kick those guys out. We defund those programs. So like if you don't know a tornado is supposed to hit, then it's like it might as well be as though the tornado never hit at all, right? And then on top of that, once the tornado does hit and people did not get the prior they did not know what to do in advance, then what's supposed to happen is FEMA's supposed to come in, right? Emergency management and disaster response from the federal government. But we defunded that too. So that's also woke and gay. So that's gone too. It's great. Based and red pilled. No more gay shit, you know? If you die in a tornado, maybe you deserved it. That kind of thing is what's going on with the current government and the way that the government operates. Fantastic. Yeah, Ryan's video on this, the next 4 days are going to be very, very rough. The severe weather outbreak is just beginning, says Ryan Hall.
It's Saturday, May 17th, 2025, and we've got a ton of weather to talk about today, man. We've got an outbreak sequence on the way. There's going to be multiple days of more severe weather, and I just wanted to make this video to keep you updated on what's going on because I don't think we're going to have a lot of time to make videos over the next few days because we're just going to be live all the time, and I know a lot of y'all really depend on these short-form videos to kind of get all the information in one area, so let's roll through this.
He's a little bit of a clickbaiter. Hey, Ryan Hall is a Twitter moot and also is on the right side automatically because he partially as a consequence of his job as like the weather guy online, and also because he has a fucking brain. He automatically is on the side of, hey, let's not underfund the NWS, the National Weather Service, nor NOAA. Kind of seems like a bad idea. So that's all it takes for me. Okay, maybe I'm crazy, but for me, all it takes for me is to hear someone say the words, let's not fund these federal programs, you know?
But real quick, before we dive into the details of the forecast, let's recap what's happened yesterday. We had a major tornado outbreak. We were live for 13 hours covering this crazy system that spawned tornadoes in Illinois. There was one that went through St. Louis. Look at this thing. You could see it through the arch camera there in St. Louis. It just about went through downtown, caused a ton of damage out there across St. Louis, and we were live for that. We were also live for this tornado. It went through Linton, Indiana, Sullivan County, Indiana. There was another big one and over towards Marion, Illinois, and unfortunately this led to a lot of damage. And the last I heard is we're getting close to 25, maybe 30 fatalities reported as a result of this tornado outbreak, and the number's still going up because search and rescue is still going on in a lot of these places, and we've got a lot of injury reports, and of course, unfortunately, there are hundreds of people today that are homeless as a result of yesterday's unfortunate tornado outbreak. Now, Colin Gross on Twitter put together this graphic here that shows one of our most prolific storms yesterday actually was a supercell that traveled for about 500 miles from the middle of Missouri all the way over into eastern Kentucky. This is the one that is responsible for most of our fatalities, actually. A lot of those came from London, Kentucky, and Somerset, Kentucky, between Wayne, Pulaski, and Laurel counties. This is over here close to the weather house. We were live last night as this thing was ripping up communities out here, and unfortunately, this is one of the places where they're still doing search and rescue right now. We don't know what the overall death toll is going to be, unfortunately, because the damage is so prolific out here. Now, this wasn't producing a tornado the entire time, but it produced several tornadoes, and it's just unbelievable that this thing traveled that far. And it was strong. We don't know the rating yet. In my opinion, it's probably going to be rated an EF4. Who knows? You know, there's engineers and stuff out there trying to figure it out right now. But this thing ate a literal path through the forest between London and Somerset. Look at this. You could actually see it on satellite this morning. You can see the scar on the earth. This is Somerset, this is London, and this is the path that it tore in between those two areas. Now, of course, it also hit Somerset and London, both on the southern side. These pictures here are from Deputy Alan Turner in Laurel County, Kentucky, and it's just so unfortunate seeing this. This isn't even the worst of it. I've seen some really crazy looking damage photos from WX Chasing on YouTube. If you want to look up that video, it really puts into perspective how bad it was, especially around London, Kentucky. And once again, y'all, you can look at this and you can just tell that unfortunately the number of injured and the number of people that we've lost is going to continue to go up, even though we had a lot of people watching from this area last night, and we did have tornado warnings and all that stuff. There's only so much you can do whenever the tornadoes are this strong. A tornado of this caliber is not common in this part of the world. A lot of people just didn't know what to do. The London Corbin Airport was also hit here, and they lost their medical helicopters, and there's a lot of homes and a lot of residential areas around that airport that were unfortunately completely obliterated as well. So once again, it was a crazy outbreak. Unfortunately, it happened, and now we've got to work on getting everything.
Watch Hassan to not get nervous about the weather. Hassan watches weather stream. I mean, a little bit. We got to take a look at what's going on. You know what I mean?
Everybody back on their feet, which is what I'm going to be focused on over the next couple of days, while also continuing to relay information about new severe weather outbreaks that are about to happen. So our hands are kind of full over here at the weather house, but we're able to give back and we're able to help people because of you. Last night, a lot of you beautiful people went over to the y'allsquad.org and you were very generous. You hit this donate button and we raised about $80,000 from y'all in a very short period of time. I went in there and I stacked another $10,000 on top of that, so we've got 90 grand to go out into these communities and immediately get assistance going. We're talking with local officials, we're seeing what people need, and we're just going to do whatever makes sense as we feel it out. We don't have a complete plan yet, but what's going to help is more resources, right? You're not required to do it. We're not asking anybody to donate, but if you've got an extra dollar or two, whatever you've got, consider going.
FEMA is ready and well funded. Yeah, no. We should actually underfund it. We should actually take away more of the funds from FEMA because FEMA is gay and woke. Obviously, this is Anyway, look, let's do some of the aftermath impact here.
Deadly
Here it
storm
is.
outbreak in our nation's heartland. Scenes of destruction across multiple states. The death toll climbing as many of the hardest hit areas could face another round of dangerous weather. ABC's Alex Stone is in London, Kentucky with more. Alex, good morning.
Wait, good morning to you. There is just so much devastation here. It is like this, mile after mile, neighborhood after neighborhood, families cleaning up, and the number killed continues to rise. This morning,
What is this? I don't know who's saying, yeah, they deserved it, but that's something that I rail against quite frequently. Like, nobody fucking deserves to have this kind of death and destruction, to experience this kind of impact just because they live in a red state. I'm just making fun of like the government and their inability to deal with these things. Obviously, it's always my efforts are always to reprioritize and reshift people's focus to who's actually responsible for the limited recovery that these people are going to experience.
communities left reeling after deadly tornadoes and storms ripped through the Midwest, claiming at least 27 lives. In Kentucky, neighborhoods in ruin.
I mean, people did that after California wildfires too. Like, I know there's a lot of leopards eating faces shit going on social media right now. It's incredibly depressing because St. Louis is one of the bluest metros in the country. Not that it matters. Yeah, it's also one of the poorest places too. Like, liberals just fucking forget. Liberals don't understand in many circumstances. First of all, liberals forget that, like, just because you voted for Donald Trump doesn't mean you should die. Okay, that's number one. Number two, a lot of these places, especially in the deep south, these deep red states, for example, still have a bunch of Democrats that vote anyway. Democrats that vote for the Democratic Party anyway. And not only that, but the other part of this is that that people don't realize is that, like, where do you think all the black people live, dude? Like, that's crazy. Liberals try to be woke. But then, like, don't realize that half the time when they're shitting on the South, they're shitting on some of the poorest areas of the South where black people have historically lived. Okay? That's it. Not that even matters, obviously. I'm saying that, like, it doesn't matter if someone is, like, black or white or voted for a Republican. I don't think anybody should have to suffer like this, you know?
Rows of houses gone, roofs ripped off homes, cars shattered. Search and rescue teams combing through the wreckage, hoping to find survivors. Across the state, 18 people now confirmed dead.
We're going to need a lot of help. We're going to need a lot of funding. We're going to need a lot of cooperation.
Rescuers say many who lost their lives lived in these London neighborhoods. 8-year-old Ellie tells me it was the scariest few minutes of her young life.
I watched Homie Spumoni on stream last night, and OG's in my chest snitched. You watched it 5 years ago. I'm telling ass man, Homie Spumoni. Did we watch it? I feel like I forgot it existed. We probably watched it.
Disintegrated around them.
Everything was just
We used to do more fun stuff.
It was one of the worst sounds.
Her mom, Kendra, injured with a broken foot and bruises from falling.
What do you think of the amount of negative attention content creators are pumping at you on Twitter and the double standards on you addressing anything? The double standards on me addressing anything? What do you mean? I address everything, perhaps far too much, and it invites more negative attention. Who cares?
Bree held on to her babies to keep them alive.
And I can remember Jordan saying, God, please protect my babies. Please keep my babies safe.
Residents here have lost so much, like Carol Wells. The home she lived in for 50 years destroyed. But she says she feels lucky to be alive.
I'm just glad that God let us live another day.
And in Missouri, at least 7 people dead. This neighborhood destroyed after a tornado tore through. And in St. Louis, where 5 of those lives were taken, crews are working around.
Not sure if you mentioned this already while watching live coverage of this event. One of these major tornadoes had a late tornado warning because a particular national weather station was short-staffed because of Doge cuts. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just like these guys are basically making America uninhabitable. I don't know if that happened in this instance, but the likelihood of that happening in the future is fairly high. It's the same principle for air traffic control. People are like, oh, what we got to do is cut air traffic control. It's too costly. Meanwhile, you're making it harder for planes to, you're making it harder for commerce to exist. You're making it harder for plane travel to happen. Like, it's not even soft eugenics. It's just, I don't even think it's like deliberately the government trying to kill poor people. I think that's just baked into capitalism, where poor people, no matter what, have the short end, get the short end of the stick, right? It's not by design where they're like, oh, just kill the poor people. Who cares? Like, it's more so we just have to make these cuts because of our endless profit seeking, our interest in endless profit seeking. And of course, the people that suffer the most in this process will always be the people that suffer the most will always be the poorest people.
Round the clock to clear debris. This massive tree uprooted from the ground. This man running for cover after it fell over his pool deck, narrowly missing him. Over in Illinois, the devastation sprawling there too. Residents beginning the painstaking process of picking up the pieces. And incredibly, guys, this home right here came from across the street. It landed where it is now. The family's possessions all over, refrigerators, countertops, toys. And we're told this family, neighbors tell us, they got out safely. Gio.
All right, Alex.
I think it's kind of devastating that there's no confidence in the government. Like, no one even thinks the government is supposed to be helping them in this process, which is crazy. I don't think there's any equivalence in any other country, no matter how rich or poor. Like maybe Somalia or something, like a super decentralized form of governance, like that's constantly engaging in like civil war or something, or like Libya, like places that have been devastated by Western intervention for the most part. But like when you look at nation states, no matter how rich or poor, there's this expectation that like the government is trying to do its best, you know, no matter how corrupt, no matter how awful, like they're going to come and they're going to help you out. In America, there is no expectation. It's crazy. What are we doing?
Incredible story overnight. That breaking news, a Mexican Navy ship slamming into New York City's iconic Brooklyn Bridge.
The mast hit the underside of the bridge, sending sailors who were on that.
The other thing about the St. Louis tornado is that it literally hit the poorest part of the city, most vulnerable people. Many of them will likely be permanently homeless.
Mast tumbled.
Yeah, this was also crazy. There's a Mexican Navy ship. People were being so ruthless about this. There's like I feel like it's maybe like a symbolic ship or something. I don't know. It's like an old-timey looking ship, and something happened where the ship ended up hitting the Brooklyn Bridge, and people were sitting on the mast, like people were working on the it's a trainer sailor, and people were working on it at the time, and they died. 2 people died, at least 2 people dead after Mexican Navy ship crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge.
Others clinging for their lives. Onlookers absolutely stunned at the scene unfolding before them on a warm spring night.
At least 2 people were killed and more than a dozen others injured. The incident setting off a huge emergency response. ABC's Rena Roy is at the scene with the very latest. Rena, good morning.
Whit, good morning to you. That's right. This bridge is a major tourist destination here, and it looked to be pretty busy when officials say that boat lost power and slammed right into it. Overnight, shock and horror after
like there were people right there. There's people on top there, I think, at the time.
Bridge, killing 2 and injuring several on board. Dramatic videos capturing the moment it happened around 8:30 p.m. Saturday. The boat approaching the bridge, slowly making its way under. Then you can see that tall mast slam into the bridge, crumbling.
The ship is a goodwill vessel that has been...
It's a traditional embarking run where they sailed to Norway. The engine failed, so they tried to open sails in order to avoid the bridge, but were too late.
On the waters for more than 20 years, sharing Mexican culture. Its name is Cuauhtémoc.
Onlookers filming from the nearby pier, some running as the ship looms closer and closer. People on board seen hanging off those broken masts. First responders rushing to the scene. Of the 277 on board, at least 2 killed, according to officials. 17 others injured, 2 still in critical condition. The training ship had been docked at a nearby pier and had just departed for its journey to Iceland.
The captain that was maneuvering the ship lost power of the ship and the current. Mechanical function caused the ship to go right into the pillar of the bridge, hitting the mast of the ship where there was a couple of sailors on top.
It looks very surreal.
Flavio Moreira was sightseeing with his family for his graduation weekend when he saw it all happen, taking this video and speaking to us shortly after from nearby.
It kept coming and coming and coming. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is so odd. It's getting too close. And then it crashed. It crashed under the bridge.
Now, officials also confirming the bridge has no damage here and nobody had fallen into the water. The NTSB now leading the urgent investigation. Gio.
And that part is very good news, Rena. Thank you so much. Turned here to the blast outside a California fertility clinic. At least one.
And then, yes, last but not least, something not talked about by media regarding tornadoes is that if the Fed government doesn't declare emergency or FEMA stuff, banks don't do emergency loans and insurance companies don't do full payout. Instead, you get predatory practices and scams is a huge issue. There's also this. At least 5 injured in an explosion outside a California fertility clinic. There's an IVF clinic in Palm Springs, and a car bomb exploded near it.
One person killed, and local authorities say it appears to be an intentional act of terrorism. ABC's Jacqueline Lee is there in Palm Springs this morning. Good morning, Jacqueline.
Gio, good morning. You can really get an idea of the magnitude of this explosion. The contents of the building spread across all 5 lanes of this main road. Now authorities are focused on identifying the person killed.
This morning, a car explosion rocking a Palm Springs fertility clinic in what officials are calling an act of terrorism.
Terrorism came knocking on the door of Palm Springs. We survived.
The blast so powerful, it injured at least 4 people, killed 1, and severely damaged buildings spanning multiple blocks Saturday.
We have a black cloud of smoke coming up.
This was probably one of the largest bombing investigations that we've had in Southern California.
Officials have a person of interest, but said they are not actively searching for a suspect. The person killed was found near the charred car on scene, but officials would not share if that person was a victim or suspect.
We heard this loud noise. We actually thought something had hit our building.
The car explosion originated in the parking lot of the American Reproductive Center, which describes itself as Coachella Valley's first and only full-service fertility center and IVF lab. The center, writing in a statement, "We are immensely grateful to share that no members of the ARC team were harmed, and our lab, including all eggs, embryos, and reproductive materials, remains fully secure and undamaged."
People are saying in the chat that like the initial suspicion is that it's like a right-wing guy, right? It's like a MAGA guy or like a super far-right Christian guy who thinks IVF is like illegal or should be illegal, an affront to God, whatever. It seems, however, that the motive was, and this is shocking, but I guess not so shocking given the world we live in, the motive might have been very Reddit motivated. Law enforcement officials in California believe the motive for the bombing of the fertility clinic in Palm Springs appears to be anti-natalism, the belief that there should be no more procreation, according to multiple officials briefed on the investigation. The FBI is handling the matter as an act of domestic terrorism which fits the alleged motive. Social media post by the person police believe is responsible is being investigated. For those of you who don't know what anti-natalism is, I mean, it is a philosophical belief that no one actually consents to being born, and that given the fact that you are, given the fact that you have the capacity to experience a tremendous amount of harm when you are born into this planet, that it is an inherently unjustifiable and inherently selfish act by your parents to give birth to you, and that no one should give birth. It is like the most Reddit ass fucking opinion you can arrive at, I think. He literally brings up r/anti-sex in his manifesto and multiple other subreddits. Yeah. We are officially in the most like Reddit ass. I mean, dude, this is the most Reddit bombing of all time. It's so fucking insane. It's so insane. I'm pretty sure I saw something that he had a pact with a friend. She's unfortunately committed, so he did as well. I don't know if there's a huge contributor, but I believe it's true. He literally brings up r/anti-sex in his manifesto and multiple other subreddits. Yeah. We are officially in the most like Reddit ass. I mean, dude, this is the most Reddit bombing of all time. It's so fucking insane. It's so insane. I'm pretty sure I saw something that he had a pact with a friend. She's unfortunately committed, so he did as well. I don't know if there's a huge contributor, but I believe it's true. Yeah. We are... It is the most American thing that could have ever happened, where you have people that basically... people with every different type of attitude, every different political background, losing their minds, becoming more and more angry, becoming more and more violent, with the tools to be able to act out this violence, and no interest in their future, and just using whatever tools is readily at their disposal, like Reddit, to radicalize themselves into a position that urges them to act this way. America is the nation of stupids and crazies. That much is clear. It is the nation of stupids and the nation of crazies. Everyone is nihilistic. Everyone is losing their fucking minds, and everyone's getting fried by their algorithms and reaching further and further into, and further towards just engaging in insane acts of violence. Isn't the philosophy morally just, though? Not saying the actions are justifiable. This is why I mean, like, I think people with autism should not encounter philosophy too much. I think like it creates a dangerous combination. I'm autistic. I ain't this stupid. I mean, I'm just saying. Like, what do I always say in this chat? There's always a guy that goes, "Hold up, is he cooking?" No matter what, no matter how dumb an idea is, in the chat, you will always have someone go, "Wait a minute, was he cooking though? Wait a minute. Let me dive a little bit deeper into this, you know? Let me dive a little bit deeper into the morality of this." I mean, it's like, it's anti-human. It's just like I don't know. I feel like anti-natalism is somewhat of a meme philosophy, I think. Before people get super mad at me, everything that I've read about it is so ridiculous at the end of the day, because, like, you know, yeah, that's what makes us human. We experience negative consequences. We experience tremendous pain. Yes, it's not guaranteed that life is going to be great, but overcoming said trials and tribulations is what makes life worth living. And clearly people still, clearly people still choose to live, right? No matter how shitty things are. Otherwise, everyone would be just fucking killing themselves nonstop, left and right. That's it. I feel like it's on the opposite end of the spectrum of what a lot of our brilliant billionaires are on. Like, all of these Elon Musk style billionaires are worried about the birth rates declining in developed nations, and they lose their minds over it. They're like endlessly talking about how we need to just keep breathing. They're pro-natalist, and that's also weird. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you got the Redditors who are like, we shouldn't, it's an unjustifiable hierarchy. You brought about someone who had no capacity to consent to being born, and therefore it should not happen, you know? Fantastic. Anyway, what is this official? Welcome. Here you can download the recorded stream of my suicide and bombing of an IVF clinic. Please do redistribute and upload wherever you can. Is this confirmed? Anyway, suspect believed to be the perpetrator of the fertility clinic bombing in Palm Springs, California, Saturday has been identified as 25-year-old Guy Edward Bartkus, a resident of 29 Palms, home to a large U.S. Marine Corps base about an hour's drive from Palm Springs, the FBI confirmed at a Sunday news conference. The suspect stated in writings or recordings that he was against bringing people into the world against their will, according to law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation. This is r/anti-natalism, a little bit of a meme philosophy that the suspect allegedly believes. The bomb used has been identified as a large vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, and its blast could be felt more than a mile away from the blast zone. We believe he was the subject found by the vehicle, Akil Davis, assistant director in charge of the FBI Los Angeles field office, said of Bartkus on Sunday's news conference, noting that the agency was working to confirm his death. The vehicle was a 2010 silver Ford Fusion sedan, Davis added. Davis also said Bartkus was not on the FBI's radar. That's what he said. So, contrary to what they normally say, where they always are like, well, this person was on our radar. They didn't say the line. Say the line, Bart. They didn't say the line. Okay. The attack, he said, marked the largest bombing ever investigated in Southern California. The subject had nihilistic ideations, and this was a targeted attack, Davis said. We believe he was attempting to live stream it, and yes, that is also part of our investigation. The cause of the blast appears to be a large vehicle-borne IED of the sort we have seen before in numerous conflict zones, according to CBS law enforcement analyst Richard Esposito. Based on the damage surrounding the buildings, damage to the surrounding buildings, the blast radius was significant, sending shudders across Palm Springs more than a mile to a mile and a half away, according to witnesses. It does require some planning and some skill to build a bomb of this kind, although we have seen similar devices with even more significant damage before, including the horror of the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. That's where it is. Yeah, that's where we're at. Fantastic.
Authorities raided a property in 29 Palms believed to be related to the suspect, not providing more details, but clarifying they believe the explosion was an isolated incident.
The American Reproductive Center says it will be fully operational come tomorrow morning. And guys, get this. Authorities say that a witness noticed there was a tripod and a camera at the scene of the explosion as if it were being live streamed. The investigation continues. Janae.
Also, the mod of the, I guess, subreddit released a press statement saying, it has come to my attention that the individual responsible for today's bombing in Palm Springs name-dropped our communities in their suicide note. Though they struggle with personal grief and mental health issues, their act of terrorism was unjustifiable, incoherent, immoral, and disgusting. The philosophy we represent is explicitly one of nonviolence. We believe it is up to each individual to make their own reproductive decisions. We hope that the Palm Springs American Reproductive Center can rebuild and resume operations. Noom Macaroon, president of the Apenis Society, head moderator of r/anti-natalism, r/circlesnip, associate moderator of r/vistopia. Putting your subreddit communities that you moderate is so crazy on a press briefing. What the fuck is happening on the planet, dude? It's over. We are living in the craziest dystopia.
A press conference.
Anyway, here's more information on the dead suspect from the police report that came afterwards.
Live press conference in Palm Springs by several authorities, including the FBI and the Palm Springs Police Department, about that fertility clinic bombing. The biggest news that we got out of this, Irene, is that the suspect that they believe is the person of interest, Guy Edward Bartkus, a 25-year-old from 29 Palms, they believe at this current time.
Is this the fall of civilization? Maybe. Sometimes I think we have the capacity to normalize all of this stuff that we're seeing and experiencing, and then before you know it, it becomes just like the normal state of affairs, the normal state of reality. So perhaps this is one of those moments. maybe there was ridiculous acts of violence in the past. I mean, luckily this one didn't actually end up severely harming anyone except for the person who detonated himself outside of the clinic. But what's really interesting is, like, I'm sure there were versions of this time adjusted to the Middle Ages or whatever, you know what I mean? Like some kind of hell-bent guy who thinks that, like, he must end the heretics or something. Like, what would be the Middle Age version of this? I'm thinking. Obviously, they don't have vehicle-borne IEDs back then, but they had some stupid things like this. I'm sure there were stupids back then too. Anabaptist rebellion, a doomsayer. No, I'm not talking about the Inquisition. Those are systematic forms of violence that are commonplace in modernity as well. I'm talking I'm talking about, like, people who are just insane, adjusted to the time frame that's, like, against the systems, but also in a way that doesn't really make sense. Okay, someone thinking that they're reacting to the normal state of existence and, like, taking matters into their own hands in this way, but in a way that, like, makes no sense whatsoever. Like when you guys bring up, like, Guy Fawkes or something, it's like, here's an example that's not comparable to this. John Brown. Okay, John Brown was also a bit of a crazy guy, but morally he was on the right side, fighting against like systems that were completely unjustifiable. Chattel slavery, the enslavement of black people, right? So that's not a good comparison. I'm talking like during the time of the Salem witch trials, if someone was like, actually, the real problem isn't the Salem witch trials in and of itself, but the fact that women exist. So we should all, like, a guy that takes into his own hands this matter and decides to just, like, cut out the middleman and kill women directly. That would be an equivalent to what this guy is doing.
Based off of the evidence that they have seen, he is the person of interest and the person that died in this. And his body was found next to the vehicle that was used as an explosive device.
Yeah, they're using the words fairly confident that this is the identity of the suspect and the person who was found deceased there at the scene. The other big part of this news conference that we're taking away is that all of the embryos in this reproductive facility were saved. So that is the good news for a lot of the people who are trying to create those families through this center.
And the 4 people that were injured, the other people that were injured in this who were possibly nearby, they were hospitalized, but then we've learned they are out of the hospital. They've been released. So that is good news that the embryos have all been saved and that the other people, maybe the bystanders in this. But they were saying the evidence goes hundreds of feet in each direction around the explosion with the vehicle. And the vehicle was a 2020 Silver Ford Fusion sedan, and he said it went hundreds of feet into the air.
Like, social maladies have always existed. This is not new. I mean, think about all the pogroms, like anti-Jewish pogroms and different types, like the witch trials, right? Like, this is not new necessarily, but I think given technological advancements, the impact of said crazies that decide to take matters into their own hands is far more consequential. And also, I don't think we're doing a good job dealing with any of this stuff because everyone is just hyper online and get radicalized in their own unique hug boxes, their own unique echo chambers, where people are constantly telling them, yes, you are right. You are so right. And when you don't have that normal mechanism, the social function of third spaces is that you're supposed to go and be around other human beings, either because, you know, you have a job, and in order to commute to your job, you see other people during transit, and you get to test your ideas around other normal human beings. And then that social function is supposed to basically curb your more ridiculous opinions and I guess like create a sense of normalcy, like recenter you. We don't have any of that anymore. And I feel like this plays a big role in the way that people become dumber and also become crazier. Yeah, a Unabomber a Unabomber in basically every online community, you know? We're so cooked when you're calling a bus a third space. No, I'm saying not only do we not have third spaces, we also don't have like public transit and things that you would normally, places where you would normally encounter other human beings. This social function is incredibly important. Humans are social beings, social animals. Bad take. This is a description of gaslighting. What? What are you even saying? That's not even a response to anything that I just said. But in any case, like that is supposed to be a balancing act, right? Okay, look, I agree with you, but it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Some people are sensitive and are appropriately terrified by what's going on in the world. Dystopia, right? This is precisely what I mean. Like, no disrespect. This is perhaps one of the worst communities to say this in, because a lot of you are extremely online, myself included. But like, no, it's not about refusing to recognize the atrocities that are unfolding all around us, but like, you unironically should not be going into a space with other individuals that have that exact same perspective, because that shuts you off from like talking to normal people and rebalancing your worldview. Aren't you afraid of crime? I guess that is like the crime panic born out of constantly watching local news. Is a different version of this, is perhaps like the more reactionary version of people who are terrified of climate change and all of the other systemic forms of violence that people are subjected to, both in the global south and even here in the United States of America. And this is like the right-wing reactionary version of that, the crime panic. These are things that happen. Okay, these are things that happen. It's a normal part of the process. And when I tell you like you're supposed to be normal, this is part of what I'm talking about, which is that like we should seek to eliminate these sorts of issues. We should work to eliminate these sorts of issues, and it requires a tremendous undertaking. Having said that, it shouldn't cripple you senseless. It shouldn't stop you from experiencing your normal day-to-day existence, okay? Perhaps I'm on the extreme end of this spectrum as someone who routinely is victim to death threats with regular frequency, and my friends think I'm insane for refusing to take this stuff seriously. But in my perspective, if I took all of this stuff seriously, I wouldn't be able to leave my fucking house. And I feel like I would inevitably become an insane person if I were just like so sheltered from the everyday existence. I don't want to be paralyzed by constant fear. The way my brain works is kind of like this. I'll give you an example. Your ears have the capacity to hear a lot more noise than you actually listen to, okay? We shut off certain noises because if we were to constantly hear all of the noises that we have the capability of hearing, we would go fucking crazy, right? You'd go crazy. And that's the way I see it. That's the way I see all of these other social maladies or systemic forms of violence and you know, crime happening, where it's like you can recognize it, you can understand that it is a normal part of it's a normal part of existence, but you shouldn't constantly tune into that frequency, because if you did, you would go insane. Okay? You would go insane if you were to recognize all of the violence that's unfolding all around you. If you live in a city, for example, you would lose your mind. That's why I'm very much against apps like Nextdoor and Citizen and Ring and all these other like user-generated content applications about crime. Because when I had Ring on my phone, I would constantly be notified of my paranoid neighbors and what they perceive to be like a crime happening. Okay? I feel like those apps have unironically made people more fascist. Because, yeah, those crimes do happen, but if you were to constantly fucking tune into those crimes happening, it creates a sense of panic. It's mass hysteria. Pair that up with a media diet that consists of like a hyper focus on like crime happening in big cities, and you arrive at boomers having their brains broken by constant crime. That paired up with the fact that crime, or at least poverty, which people assume sometimes correctly is an indication of crime, is all around you, especially if you live in a big city. Homelessness, right? And then it creates this unique place in your mind where you're like, this is all around. This is crazy. You're wrong about part of this. It's not part of the human existence to know everything going on all the time. The internet has given us access to too much information. Human brains are not equipped to handle it. I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with it. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that like you're supposed to tune it out. You're supposed to go, yeah, it's normal. It happens. The great example I always use is Austin, right? Austin lives in a suburb. He lives in a suburb in Portland. So he's not used to hearing police sirens all the time. But if you live in a city, whether it be New York or even a city like Los Angeles, right? You're used to it. You're used to hearing police sirens. You're used to hearing emergency services pass through. If you're in a suburb and you hear police sirens, you're like, oh my God, this is unique. What the hell's going on? I guess my next door neighbor killed his whole family. But if you live in a place like Los Angeles and you hear emergency services outside, you're like, oh, that's normal. That's a normal part of living in a city because things are always happening. Okay? Like it's if you're so adjusted to that frequency of never hearing sirens, okay, because you don't live in a densely populated area, and then you actually move to a densely populated area, or you're visiting a densely populated area, which also obviously increases the likelihood of things happening, crimes, violence, fires, and the like, you're going to freak out. And what you are supposed to do in that process is just go, okay, maybe this is normal. That is a major difference between people that have only grown up in the suburbs and like segregated communities and people who grew up in big cities. Major problem here in America, a nation comprised of enclaves and exurbs and suburbs that surround these cities, rural areas that are all around. America is so vast and so large that, yes, there are a lot of places where, there are a lot of places that are densely populated. But there's also plenty of areas that, have a shit ton of people living in them that are completely isolated.
And they're calling it now like the biggest explosion or bomb in Southern California history.
Yes, absolutely. And we're also learning a little bit more about the suspect, what the FBI knows about the suspect's background. They say that he had nihilistic ideations.
All that hippy-dippy touchgrass bullshit is great and all, but how will the tech billionaires get the absolute maximum ad and data revenue by algorithmically entrapping the population amorally with no care for the ramifications? It's not cheap to live in a palace far away from all the effects you cause. I think one of the funnier parts about this is that capitalism, or the dogmatic approach to capitalism, has also created this weird structure where like billionaires cannot shelter themselves from the worst impacts of the society that they've designed for themselves. They are ruining everything. They're ruining society for themselves as well, but they're so invested in short-term profit seeking that they can't even comprehend it. Climate change is perhaps one of the greatest examples of this, because you don't live in Mars, dude. You don't live somewhere else. You still live on this planet, okay? Sure, in the short term, you will be better off than the rest of humanity that won't be able to shelter themselves from the impacts of anthropogenic climate change, especially people who live in poorer neighborhoods, right? But like, what's going to happen? What's the end point? You can't live in a space station, or even if you wanted to live in a fucking space station, is that a far preferable mode of existence than like just living on this planet in a way that is more sustainable, in a way that is habitable for all? That's it. It's so dumb. It's an incredibly nearsighted way of approaching reality because you're just so hyper invested in short-term profits. Like we talk about, or these guys talk about living in Mars or whatever, but it's like, dude, if you're talking about terraforming an utterly uninhabitable place all the way out there, okay, which we don't even know if we have the capacity to get to and like live sustainably. Okay, why don't you fucking fix Earth first? You know, the lies I see about trans people online is wild. Counterpoint: real world people treat me amazingly. Online is a mess for trans people. The further right you go, the more recluse the populace seems to be. Hence the incel issue, I guess. I mean, that's part of it. And I think that incel issue is like bipartisan. I think it's just something that impacts a lot of people, regardless of their political perspectives. And once you're hit with that brain poison, you turn more right-wing, you turn more sheltered, you become more fearful, you become more paranoid, and your hyper-focus is like systemic violence that you perceive, but from an incredibly narrow scope, the scope of women existing and harming you. Feminism. The social maladies I speak of are identical, whether it be transphobia or whether it be hating women. It's identical. It's just a false attribution to the violence that you're subjected to, like structural violence that you're subjected to. It's just misplaced anger with no one trying to redirect your attention to the actual issues, the actual things that ruin your life. Every lib radfem I know who started leaning right started with transphobia. Yeah.
They're calling this an intentional act of terrorism. The FBI also is tracking a possible manifesto. That suspect was also trying to live stream the attack as it was happening. No confirmation on if he was successful or not in doing so. But this is the first time that this person has been on the FBI's radar. Not to say that he has not had a criminal history before.
And they've received hundreds of tips, they said, from people throughout the community about this, and they continue to investigate. There are still gaps in the investigation where he went before the explosion. So they're hoping that they can piece together all the information that they're receiving from people. They said to contact the FBI tip line, that's FBI.gov, Palm Springs vehicle explosion. And that is something that can help them as they try to piece this all together. Maybe that manifesto will release more information on this.
And again, the federal and local officials are confirming that there is no threat to the public at this point in time, and they are not looking for any other suspects right now.
I'm joined now.
Chatter from before, I agree with what you just said. It is important to stay sane and not dwell on it and spend time with normal people. I'm not disagreeing. Let's just not make fun of people. Let's not make fun of the appropriate maladies of empathy. Vistopia is not inherently a chronically online thing. Everyone I've met with it specifically does not spend time online on purpose. Meat is still on every plate and in every supermarket. Stop dismissing. Wait, what? Okay. Sure. These guys kept saying Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Now that they're in a position of power, they say he killed himself. You said, Bart Hiromo says, you said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it. Patel, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was. Bongino, he killed himself. I've seen the whole file. He killed himself. Interesting. What happened? All of a sudden, when you grab the reins of power, you start spitting out the same output. Ain't no way. That's crazy.
Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion.
I've never felt more convinced that Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself than this very moment. Watching these champions of QAnon turn around, and openly recognize, openly spit out the State Department line, okay? Oh my God. 100p, dude. 100p.
But as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
Oh yeah, totally.
He killed himself. Again, you want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Also, they won't show the whole file to anybody else. That's the other thing. What happened to that Jeffrey Epstein file that they were going to release? Yeah, Andrew, episode 1, also talked about the IVF bombing in Palm Springs and the bomber being a Redditor. The biggest voice of modern anti-natalism is a South African atheist Zionist, maybe one of the most Redditor-style guys you could be. David Benatar, born 1966, is a South African philosopher, academic, and author. He is best known for his work in moral philosophy and for advancing the position of anti-natalism, the view that coming into existence is a serious harm. He's the author of Better never to have been, the harm of coming into existence, in which he argues that procreation is always morally wrong because it imposes harm by bringing sentient beings into existence. Central to his view is his asymmetry argument, which holds that the absence of pain is good, even if no one benefits from it, while the absence of pleasure is not bad unless someone is deprived of it. Benatar has also written on topics including death, ethics, human suffering, and gender discrimination. He's emeritus professor of philosophy at the University of Cape Town and is a member of the editorial board of the Journal of Controversial Ideas. As I described to you what anti-natalism is, I think I did a pretty good job of explaining it to you because I'm familiar with his work. I did not know he was also a pro-Israel kind of guy. Yeah, anti-natalist people are also annoying, just like pro-natalist people are. Another backtrack, Bongino's whole job was, as a podcaster, was pushing conspiracy theories about the shooting. And now that he's in the FBI, he's rolling back those conspiracy theories. Interesting. All right, we'll get to that in a second. Let's look at Witkoff from the Sunday.
Now, by the man at the center.
From the Sunday interviews, the Goatkoff, the fucking great deal maker, the piece of shit that fucked over the Palestinians aggressively. I got to pee.
Of negotiations with Iran, Russia, and more. President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. Mr. Witkoff, good morning, and thank you for joining us. Let me start right with the news we reported, which is that the President Trump plans to speak by phone tomorrow with Vladimir Putin. Do you expect this call will lead to direct negotiations between President Trump, President Putin, and President Zelensky, in-person negotiations?
Look, John, we had direct negotiations in Istanbul. There were some good achievements made, including the release of hostages. We have to get to a ceasefire. That's the president's position, and we all agree with that position. And most importantly, we have to get to a final peace deal. And the president has a force of personality that is unmatched. I think it's important. His sensibilities are that he's got to get on the phone with President Putin, and that is going to clear up some of the logjam and get us to the place that we need to get to. And I think it's going to be a very successful call.
What did you make of Putin's not going to Istanbul? I mean, President Trump even offered to adjust his trip to be there himself. Why was it, do you think, that Putin decided not to go?
Look, I don't want to comment on his motivations. I think in some respects it may have something to do with the delegation that he had sent to the original Istanbul talks, but those were different circumstances back then as compared to today. I want to leave it to, I want to be a bit more positive about this. I believe that the president is going to have a successful call with Vladimir Putin. They know each other. The president is determined to get something done here, and hopefully, if he can't do it, then nobody can. So I leave it to the two leaders to have that call.
Vice President Vance said recently that the Russians, quote, are asking for too much. Is that your assessment of where we are right now? Is Putin asking for too much?
My assessment is that this is a very complicated conflict that shouldn't have happened. I completely agree with President Trump in that regard. And, you know, you've got people who are at each other. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of hatred, and the carnage has to end. And so I think in a negotiation like this, people take positions. The art, the elegance of it, and the president is the master at this. I've said many times that I follow his tactics because they work. The art here is to narrow that wide berth between the parties, and I think to some extent we've done that. To some extent, each party is staking out their positions, and I think Monday will go a long way towards identifying where we are and how we complete this negotiation.
Okay, and then we have the other major set of negotiations with Iran. Can you give us a sense of what is the outline of the deal that President Trump wants to get with Iran?
Well, the president has been very clear. He wants to solve this conflict diplomatically and with dialogue. And he's given all the signals. He's directly sent letters to the supreme leader. I have been dispatched to deliver that message as well, and I've delivered it. But on the other hand, we have one very, very clear red line, and that is enrichment. We cannot allow even 1% of an enrichment capability. We've delivered a proposal to the Iranians that we think addresses some of this without disrespecting them. And so that's important. We want to get to a solution here, and we think that we will be able to. But everything begins from us.
I don't believe this at all, dude. I don't. I've been incredibly skeptical of the Trump administration offering back channel communication to Hamas from the start. These guys are working closely alongside Israel. Israel is their North Star here. Israel is the nation state that guides and is incredibly important in America's grand design for the region. And for that reason, I just don't think that there is any real deal making here with Iran. The reason why I don't think there's any real deal making here with Iran is because their goal ultimately is to have complete control over the region through these security partnerships. They can't have complete control over the region through trade deals because the only thing that they do, or I guess like America's version of a trade deal is security partnerships, because that's the only thing that we manufacture. We manufacture weapons, and we give those weapons to our regional cooperators. But the goal here ultimately is to, just like everywhere else in the Western world, is to decouple from China. Okay? That's the major world war that we are gearing towards. Iran is on the opposite side of this endeavor. Iran and Russia being maybe a country that America thinks it can deal with and use as like a neutral territory, is on the opposing side because they've been forced out of being in the periphery of the West, being a part of the global trade scheme that the United States of America has cooked up, right? And therefore, they are on the side of China, okay? So any matter of dealing with Iran has to be thought about with that ambition in mind. Everything can be, this is reductive, but everything can be seen from the lens of America versus China, the two poles, okay? This is the reason why I don't think that America is interested or genuinely invested in peacemaking with Iran.
Standpoint, John, with a deal that does not include enrichment. We cannot have that because enrichment enables weaponization, and we will not allow a bomb to get here. But short of that, there are all kinds of ways for us to achieve our goals in this negotiation. We think that we will be meeting sometime this week in Europe, and we hope that it will lead to some real positivity.
I just don't trust America or Israel at all in any of these deal makings. Here's a great example. Breaking. The Israeli Security Cabinet has decided on Sunday to immediately resume the transfer of humanitarian aid to Gaza through existing channels until new humanitarian aid mechanism starts working, according to two senior Israeli officials said. Yeah. So on its face, you think, oh, how wonderful. Israel is allowing humanitarian aid to go back into the Strip. That's great. Except the reason why they're doing this, or what they're trying to do, for the record, what they're trying to do here is something incredibly nefarious. And I talked about it already. Drop Site News also reported on it. It's something that they've been gearing for already. Okay? It is called, I forget what it is, but it's based out of Switzerland, I think. It's a new group that they've created called the Gaza Charity or something. Hold on. Let me give you the actual report on this. 1 second. Gaza Humanitarian Organization. Humanitarian Foundation, Israel. So, here it is. Head of controversial new Gaza aid group says he won't be part of displacing Palestinians, urges UN to participate in the plan. So, this is the reason why I don't trust America, and this is the reason why I don't trust Israel, okay? This is an Israel-backed aid group. It's not a real aid organization at all. Okay, it's not a real aid organization at all. There are already real aid organizations that work on the ground, and Hamas is not a threat to these aid organizations. Israel is a threat to these aid organizations. So understand that, okay? This is, in some ways, a more deranged version of the Gaza humanitarian aid pier that America built under the Biden administration, specifically so they could make it seem as though Israel was not inhibiting aid from going into the Strip when they very clearly were. This is an escalated version of that. This is far more evil than that. It's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, okay? And the security guards for the American company that will distribute aid in Gaza landed at Ben Gurion Airport. They don't seem like fun people to fight with, okay? An Israel journalist posted that American security guards landed in Israel. They will in charge of distributing aid in Gaza. They do not seem like fun people to fight with. Great. Can these same guards intercept the American 2,000-pound bombs before they hit tents and kill families who will be surviving on that aid? Serious question, says Mossab Abu Toha, the famous Palestinian award-winning poet Mossab. Okay. I said the problem with aid distribution in Gaza is that Israel is blocking it. The fact that American mercs alongside the Israeli occupying force will choose who to give aid to while restricting calories and using it as a surveillance dragnet is insane, pure Nazi shit. We are watching a live-streamed Holocaust. Okay? This is not aid distribution. This is trying to use in the most nefarious way possible, in direct contravention of international human rights law, in direct odds with how aid is supposed to be distributed by NGOs. Instead of doing that, they are violating all of those laws to weaponize aid against a captive population that is being bombed inside of an open air prison, a concentration camp. It's the most insidious version. It is the most insidious version of this process that I've seen thus far. It's almost as insidious and almost as gross as basically completely refusing to let in any aid. It actually partners with Israel's lack of interest in letting in any sort of humanitarian aid into the Strip. This is a way to make up for one of the major issues that I've talked about that Israel has. Israel is experiencing manpower issues, okay? They do not have enough manpower and enough interest in permanently occupying the Gaza Strip. And the reason for, there's just, the reserves are pissed off. They don't have their ranks. They're having a hard time. So how do you make up for that? You make up with U.S. security contractors, mercenaries. It's a way to basically not have the U.S. military officially be on the ground in Gaza, but still have U.S. military officially operate in Gaza by way of mercenaries. Because given our war on terror, given our war economy, we have plenty of former special forces operators and military contractors that work as private military contractors now. This is what's happening. Those guys are going to be in charge of aid distribution in the Strip. There's a reason why the United Nations and every single humanitarian organization and human rights group has railed against this process, okay? Israel's agreed to allow some food into Gaza before a newly approved mechanism for aid deliveries is up and running later this month. The head of the newly established Gaza Humanitarian Foundation told CNN. These are all military contractors. Do you understand? The aid distribution in the Strip is going to be conducted by military contractors. That's insane. They are weaponizing aid against a captive population that is starving and desperate for it. It is insane that they're doing this. It's like they don't have enough concentration camp guards. So now America is sending concentration camp guards into the area, mercenary concentration camp guards into the area to distribute aid by, not by need, mind you, but by whatever their colonial ambitions are. And in the short term, the Israeli Security Cabinet has decided on Sunday to immediately resume the transfer of humanitarian aid to Gaza through existing channels. Is there any chance that U.S. mercs will be more humane than the Zio-Nazis? I'm so desperate for any reprieve from Gaza that I'm searching for something. I don't think so. I mean, maybe, because obviously the Israeli occupying force is so fucking brutal because of the
extraordinary,
the insane amounts of like brainwashing and propaganda that has taken place in the mind of the average Israeli occupying force combatant, that perhaps these war criminals, many former veterans that have a litany of war crimes under their belt from their previous incursion in the war on terror in the region, they could even come across as more sympathetic to the Palestinians than the Israeli occupying force. But I'm not banking on that at all. Do you understand?
Circumstances on the ground right now, you've asked the Israeli government to allow aid in temporarily through existing mechanisms. Have they agreed to that, and how soon will that aid get in, if so?
That's right. We think that the situation on the ground is clearly urgent, and we can't afford to wait. We are committed to being operational with our plan by the end of the month, ideally in advance of that. But no time like the present to move aid in under existing mechanisms. The Israelis have agreed to that operational condition. We don't yet have final details as conversations are ongoing about what precisely that means and when, but we do expect to have some positive updates on that in the coming days.
Once you are up and running, how many distribution sites will you have in Gaza immediately, and how much of Gaza's population do you expect those distribution sites to be able?
Like, if the problem with aid distribution wasn't Israel, okay, if the problem with aid distribution was that, like, there is like a third party involved here that is genuinely presenting a danger to humanitarian rights organizations, then it makes sense why you would need additional security. Because a lot of these humanitarian aid organizations do hire security when they're operating in the region, right? Part of that security is a necessity because there are criminal elements, for example, that disrupt the aid delivery process, for example, especially when normal societal functions have completely broken down. There's no civil organization, like there's no civilian-focused organization like the police force to maintain an orderly process, or when there is a police force that tries to maintain some sense of order at the point of distribution, Israel kills that person immediately, like the next day. And there are criminal elements in the region right now backed by the Israeli occupying force, but Hamas, with the limited amount of with the limited capacities that it currently has, still can implement a curfew, for example, and even punish those who are operating alongside the Israeli security interests in the region, the criminal elements that get full reign to disrupt aid delivery, for example, or steal aid delivery. So there is some version of that, some version of order, but Israel is routinely assassinating those who actually try to maintain that semblance of order. But the reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because Israel is the reason why the aid delivery is disrupted. They're both shutting off aid delivery at the point of the border, okay? There are thousands of trucks waiting with tons and tons of humanitarian aid at the border that could go into Gaza, that could easily deliver aid into Gaza, and Israel is refusing to let that in. And also, on top of that, the limited aid that has entered during like the ceasefire time, for example, Israel has actively worked to disrupt in the distribution side by letting criminal elements basically fucking do whatever they want to do in the region under the cover of drones, under the security of drone bombings, if anyone tries to actually go against them. So obviously, the major issue here for humanitarian aid is not necessarily Hamas. It's never been Hamas, as a matter of fact. It's Israel. And we're playing this like song and dance, just like Biden did with the Gaza aid pier, but a evolved version of that same song and dance that is going to be even scarier now.
Yeah, well, we are going to immediately open up by the end of the month 4 secure distribution sites. We have plans to ramp up to 8 to 10. That will include locations in northern Gaza. The initial plan, as we have today, is going to provide 300 million meals over the first 90 days.
Top humanitarian aid officials have been very critical of this plan. They say that it will enable the forced displacement of Palestinians, that it will bring additional risks to the lives of Palestinians living in Gaza. Tom Fletcher, the United Nations Emergency Relief Coordinator, called this a, quote, cynical sideshow and a, quote, fig leaf for further violence and displacement. What's your response to those comments and criticisms?
A lot of what NGOs and the UN heard early was full of misinformation. There were a lot of rumors about the IDF providing the direct security here. There were rumors about, biometric.
Why does it have to be mercenaries that's distributing this aid? Why can't the mercenaries work alongside normal aid distribution that already exists? Why won't Israel allow journalists into the Gaza Strip? Why won't Israel allow humanitarian aid organizations into the Gaza Strip? Why won't Israel allow the hundreds of trucks that are piling up at the fucking border with tons of aid into the Gaza Strip? There is a reason why Israel is letting this happen. It's because this is a part of the colonial ambition, okay? That's it. That's it. Their goal here is not to actually distribute aid. Their goal is to weaponize aid. That is the reason why all of the United Nations and all of the NGOs that work in the region are saying this is completely unacceptable. The UN and other organizations say working with Gaza Humanitarian Foundation with compromised neutrality. The organization backed by Israel to take over food distribution in Gaza as famine looms has admitted it would not be able to feed some of the most vulnerable civilians from the militarized compounds it plans to set up. They're going to be distributing aid from militarized compounds. Aid groups in the United Nations have already refused to work with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a Swiss-registered organization led by a former U.S. Marine. This guy that we just saw, Jake Woods, okay? They say it does not have the capacity to end hunger in Gaza and would make it harder to get aid to civilians caught up in other wars by undermining their neutrality. Israel has not officially laid out its plans for food distribution in Gaza, but statements from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and briefings from Israeli officials envisage 4 or 5 militarized distribution centers in southern Gaza, run by private security companies under the oversight of Israeli military bases. GHF is in advanced discussions with Israel on details and timing and hopes to have news soon, a person involved with planning at the foundation said. They're building military outposts, and because they don't have enough manpower to sustain those military outposts, they're literally building military outposts under the guise of humanitarian aid distribution, and it's backed by American mercenaries. Do you understand? Yeah. UN agencies reject Israeli plan to use aid as bait. And that's precisely what they're doing. When you're like, this is comical, this is like comic book villain shit, this is precisely what the goal is here. Okay? UN Children's Fund spokesperson James Elder insisted that Israeli proposal to create a handful of aid hubs exclusively in the south of the Strip would create an impossible choice between displacement and death. The plan contravenes basic humanitarian principles and appears designed to reinforce control over life-sustaining items as a pressure tactic, he told journalists in Geneva. It's dangerous to ask civilians to go into militarized zones and collect rations. Humanitarian aid should never be used as a bargaining chip. The Gaza Strip has been under a complete aid blockade for more than 2 months, and humanitarians have warned repeatedly that food, water, and medicines and fuel have been running out. The Israeli aid distribution blueprint presented to UN humanitarians envisages only 68 trucks per day entering Gaza, 1/10 of what has been delivered during the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which held from 19th of January to 18th of March. It is not nearly enough to meet the needs of 1.1 million children, 2.1 million people, Mr. Elder insisted. There's a simple alternative. Lift the blockade, let the humanitarian aid in, and save lives. But they don't want to do that because you have to remember, they want to exterminate and ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, and they want to permanently occupy the Gaza Strip militarily. This is the goal. So, of course, when you realize that that is the goal, which is, by the way, not even a goal that they are sheltering the public from. This is their stated goal at this point. When you realize that that is their stated goal, all of these things that they do is at the behest of said stated goal. It is so sinister. It is so terrifying and so inhumane to weaponize aid distribution like this, to create military strongholds in the middle of Gaza backed by U.S. mercs because you don't have enough manpower in the Israeli occupying force to permanently occupy Gaza right now. It's mind-boggling that they're just doing this under the watchful gaze of the Western world, under Western leadership that refuses to contend with this reality. Oh, they are going to use a bag of flour to do a mass surveillance upon the entirety of the Gaza Strip. They are going to deny humanitarian aid to groups that they decide are dangerous. Okay? They have done this already. Isn't it bait for Hamas to kill U.S. Army personnel? I don't think I don't think it's bait for Hamas to kill U.S. Army personnel either. What is this? Yeah, no, I already talked about this. Yes, this is the first stage of this. So they approve immediate return of humanitarian aid in the Gaza without release of hostages, but only because, as Jake Woods said on CNN, they're doing this so that they can advance the U.S. military compounds that they're building in the region in southern Gaza.
The being shared back with the Israeli government. And I cannot blame the humanitarian community for crying foul amid that misinformation. I would not have participated in a plan that did those same things. However, that is not the plan. I want to stress this plan is not perfect, but this plan will be feeding people by the end of the month in a scenario where no one has allowed aid to be in over the course of the last 10 weeks.
So will this aid mechanism be able...
They're doing this thing where like Israel set up a condition that is like a complete blockade on aid. So obviously this is better than a complete blockade on aid, right? So that the dumbest person on the planet can say, well, technically this is helpful. This is better, right? If given the option of cutting off both of your arms and your head, they simply say, okay, we're going to cut off one of your arms. You prefer that, right? You prefer that over to cutting off both of your arms and then finally your head. But it's like, you shouldn't be cutting off any of the arms or the head at all. There's another solution out there that you are just blocking the public from even thinking about, which is not stopping aid from entering the Strip. There are plenty of organizations that are willing to work in the Strip. Israel refuses to allow them into the Strip. And when they do allow them into the Strip, they kill them too. That's the other part of this.
Able to function without those major UN agencies? Will you have the stocks of aid? Will you have the trucks, the infrastructure to be able to get enough aid and then distribute it inside of Gaza?
I think right now it's hard to say. Ultimately, the community is going to face a choice. This is going to be the mechanism by which aid can be distributed in Gaza. Are you willing to participate? The answer is going to be, pretty critical to whether or not this ramps up to sufficiently feed 2.2 million people in a very desperate situation.
The whole reason that this mechanism is being set up is because Israel won't let aid into Gaza in any other way. Israel accuses Hamas of stealing aid and then profiting off of the aid.
This is negligent. This is gross negligence that I suspect is just simply propaganda. The idea that like Hamas is actually a burden to aid distribution is a lie, okay? It is just an outward lie. Straight up. Straight up. There is only reporting to show the exact opposite, okay? The notion that like Hamas is actually fucking up the aid distribution in the Strip is ridiculous at a time when Israel's not letting any aid into the Gaza Strip. That's it. If anything, Hamas has not been a hurdle in aid distribution. Hamas has actually tried to create a sense of organization around the point of distribution at a time when Israel has done the Flower Massacre and at a time when Israel has armed certain groups in the region, criminal elements in the region, to actually create chaos at the point of aid distribution or to even steal aid distribution. There is so much reporting on this. Heads of household would be expected to collect boxes weighing up to 20 kilograms with several days' supply of food and basic hygiene items like soap for their families. There is no provision for those too sick or weakened by famine to walk long distances across Gaza's ruined landscape with heavy loads. From what we've understood, the plan would increase the ongoing suffering of children and families in the Gaza Strip, said United Nations Children's Fund spokesperson Jonathan Cricks. How is a mother of 4 children who has lost her husband going to carry 20 kilograms back to her makeshift tent, sometimes several kilometers away? The most vulnerable people, including the elderly people with disabilities, the sick and wounded, and orphans, will face huge challenges to access aid. Beyond logistical problems with Israel's plans, humanitarian organizations say that agreeing to work under Israel's military would compromise the neutrality that is the most crucial protection for their unarmed teams. It would also make it harder for them to operate in other conflict zones where neutrality is key to being able to reach civilians in contested areas. These plans are basically instrumentalizing humanitarian aid, putting it into the hands of the party to the conflict, which goes against the principles of impartiality and independence. We don't work with parties to any conflict, said Bushra Khalidi, policy lead for the Palestinian territory at Oxfam. Giving the concentration camp guards the distribution of humanitarian aid, the capacity to distribute humanitarian aid is so insane to me. I hope you guys can understand. This is a new a new meta of war crimes built on top of an endless sea of war crimes. But of course, it's not. Israel's no stranger to violating rules of war and rules of conflict with regular frequency, whether it be having their special forces team dress up like doctors and patients to go and assassinate someone in a hospital bed, as they have done so, or given the reporting on Israel potentially using even Red Cross ambulances to conduct a military operation alongside a bombing wall campaign that they engaged in when they were trying to extract some of the hostages. They killed 200 Palestinians. And I don't put it past America, because America has also played along with this, with the Gaza humanitarian aid pier sham that was a $250 million marketing tactic to make it seem as though Israel was rendering aid into the Gaza Strip. That pier barely brought in any aid whatsoever. This is also part of the process in the ways in which America has utilized doctors around the world, like in Pakistan. Part of the operation to find Osama bin Laden, which is so crazy that they were like trying to find Osama bin Laden, like they didn't know where the fuck he was. I still don't believe that. They had a mass inoculation campaign in Pakistan. That mass inoculation campaign in Pakistan was actually to collect DNA information from random citizens of Pakistan. It created insane anti-vaxxer sentiment. That was all. There's a reason why some of these things, there's a reason why all of these things are a part of the rules of global war, the rules of conflict. Okay? It's because you're not supposed to harm the civilian population in the process. You're not supposed to you're not supposed to weaponize aid distribution, because then people can't trust the aid distribution. You can never trust aid distribution ever again in that process. You're like, well, I don't know if this is poisoned. Israel is giving this to me, and Israel's dropping bombs on my head. So there is no reason to believe that this is also going to be, there's no reason to believe that this is also going to be like real aid. It's going to most likely be fucking poison is what people are going to think. Anyway, Dropsite is doing an investigation into the Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Newly formed U.S.-backed private foundation forms the backbone of Israel's new plan to control all humanitarian aid entering into Gaza. 68 days in the total siege, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, is being marketed as a secure and efficient alternative to UN and NGO pipelines, which Israel has systematically attacked and sought to dismantle. Staffed by U.S. military veterans, former officials, and corporate financiers, GHF promises to deliver aid to 1.2 million Palestinians through privately secured distribution hubs, with plans to expand to more than 2 million. A closer look at the foundation's presentation documents obtained by Axios indicates it is likely to serve as a foreign-controlled proxy to militarize aid, sideline Palestinian institutions, and entrench a system of occupation under the guise of neutrality. I know Biden has cancer. I don't give a fuck. Shut the fuck up, chatters. I know. I saw the report, okay? Caitlin Collins reports Joe Biden has ass cancer. I know, okay? I told you this was going to most likely happen. I told you he was going to fucking lose the election and then die quietly. Okay? And there it is. All right? I know. It's not karma. Come on. This is fucking nothing in comparison to the incalculable harm that Biden has contributed to the world, specifically the Palestinians. Okay? DHF says it will establish 4 secure division sites inside Gaza, each designed to serve up to 300,000 people with food. A new foreign architecture for Gaza. Who's running it? The organization is led entirely by U.S. and international actors, with no Palestinians involved in the leadership or oversight of the project. Okay, Jake Wood is the executive director, Team Rubicon founder. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. You saw him. He's the one in the polo tee talking to CNN here. Okay, not that guy. That guy's the CNN anchor here.
It resells to the Palestinian people.
That's Jake Wood. This is Jake Wood. David Burke, Chief Operating Officer. John Ackrey, Head of Missions, ex-USAID. Board members include Nate Mook, former CEO of World Central Kitchen. Riza Scheinberg, ex-U.S. Treasury Terrorist Financing, now MasterCard VP. Jonathan Foster, Wall Street Financier. Loke Henderson, Corporate Governance Lawyer. Advisory Board includes military and diplomatic officials, including LTG Mark Schwartz, former U.S. Security Coordinator for Israel/PA. Bill A. Miller, former UN and U.S. security official. David Beasley, former head of the World Food Program, pending confirmation. Formerly registered just months ago in Geneva, according to Letemps, the group was incorporated with a Swiss lawyer, a U.S.-based legal consultant, and an Armenian financier on its board, none of whom have a background in humanitarian work. There is no Palestinians in GHF's governance or operational leadership. Oh my God, everyone is talking about Biden's ass cancer. Okay, fuck it. Let's talk about Biden's ass cancer. Yes. President Joe Biden has prostate cancer, his office announces. He's reviewing treatment options. Last week, President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, characterized by a Gleason score of 9, grade group 5, with a metastasis to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The president and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. Knowing that evil never dies, I don't think that this 95-year-old man is actually going to die from this ass cancer, okay? Or prostate cancer. It's not. Prostate is the part of his dick that is in his ass. Technically, this is dick cancer. Yeah. Anyway, we already talked about it. Israel is allowing a limited amount of distribution of aid into the Strip for the time being. If it's metastasized, he's definitely not going to make it out at this age. Yeah. Yeah, wishing him a speedy recovery so we can run in 2028, you know? Biden the butcher. Tragic. He's so young. He's so young. And look what happened to this young man. Another one taken so soon. Here, let's see what CNN is saying. I'm sure they're breaking news covering this right now. Probably not, actually. All right, there's ads on CNN. Breaking. Israeli Prime Minister's office says Israel will introduce a basic amount of food into Gaza to prevent famine, framing it as necessary to sustain the expansion of intense fighting to defeat Hamas. On the recommendation of the IDF, out of the operational need to enable the expansion of intense fighting to defeat Hamas, Israel will introduce a basic amount of food to the population in order to ensure that a famine crisis does not develop in the Gaza Strip. Such a crisis would jeopardize the continuation of Gideon Chariot's operation to defeat Hamas. Israel will work to deny Hamas' ability to take control of the distribution of humanitarian aid to ensure that the aid does not reach Hamas terrorists. Why is everyone coming in here to tell me this? I know already. I know Biden has ass cancer. I know. Oh my God. Everyone is coming in here right now. Netanyahu forced this decision through cabinet despite opposition to far-right ministers, pressure from Trump working, aka the Witkoff effect. First step before a ceasefire. This after months of Israel officials talking up the distribution hubs plan, which now seems to be on hold. I don't think it's on hold. This is a part of the distribution hubs plan. If it was on hold, they would not have had American security contractors, mercenaries, already landing in Ben Gurion Airport. I got to bring out the text again. Here. Not that people care or read it. Oh my God. Everyone is coming in here to fucking post this. I know, chatters. I know. Here, let's get the CNN.
10 minutes ago, we received a statement from the personal office of former President Joe Biden announcing that Biden had been diagnosed on Friday with what they describe as an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. I want to read you that full statement. It says, last week, President Joe Biden was seen for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, characterized by a Gleason score of 9 with metastasis to the bone. While this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. The statement goes on to say that Biden and his family are reviewing treatment options with his physicians. Of course, former President Biden is 82 years old, and there was so much scrutiny around his mental acuity and physical fitness to serve a second term back in July of 2024 during the presidential campaign. Of course, the former president ultimately dropping out of the race after that debate. And of course, all of that is the subject of a brand new book from our colleague Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson out this month that is really generating a lot of headlines, as well as the release of audio tapes from the former special counsel Robert Hur, audio of the president struggling to recount certain dates and names. But of course, this is a somewhat optimistic diagnosis. They say the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, allowing for effective management. But of course, it is quite serious if it has spread to his bones. Again, they're describing it as an aggressive form of prostate cancer. Frederica, we have reached out to the White House for comment from the Trump administration on this development and waiting to hear more from President Biden and his family as the time goes by.
Right. All of those words seem to be very alarming, but then like you mentioned, the statement being pacified by some optimism of a type of treatment that might be available. I know you're going to continue to do some reporting, and we'll check back with you. Thank you so much, Betsy Klein, for helping to break that news. All right, our Dana Bash is also on the line with us. And so, Dana, from the information that Betsy is just conveying, that this prostate nodule was discovered, do we know anything about a history?
Well, now he can be in charge of the oversight committee. You know, don't you think?
Or nodules prior to this diagnosis that is now being announced and shared that this is an aggressive form of prostate cancer?
Hi, Frederica. Not that we know of. Look, when you're talking about a president, a former president, and his medical health, we theoretically should know a lot, if not everything, about it. So if there was a history that he personally had, we, would likely know about it. And, listen, as you know, I mean, we all have people in our families who, particularly men of a certain age, who get tested regularly for prostate cancer. And as we saw in the statement, they get a Gleason score, and that determines whether or not they have prostate cancer, and if so, how aggressive it is. Like Betsy said, the thing that clearly is very concerning is that it is spread to his bones. But look, this is also a man who has had a son who died from cancer. Now, former President Biden says that they believe that the reason Beau Biden got cancer, very different kind of cancer, brain cancer, was because of exposure to burn pits while on a military mission. We never know, and we won't know if that's, for sure 100%. But what we do know now is that the former president is very lucky in this sense. He has the best care that pretty much anyone could get. And there's no question that he is going to be, they're going to find the best care, as they say in the statement. And the idea, as you were saying, Fred, that it seems to be the kind of cancer that would respond to hormones, that's a very, very big deal, regardless of whether or not it is in his bones or not.
All right, I think we lost that signal with Dana Bash. We'll try to reestablish. Thank you so much, Dana. Also with us, David Axelrod. David, I mean, this is striking, shocking news. Yes, he is of a certain age, 82, and prostate-related problems can certainly arise at about this stage of life. But that his diagnosis, according to that statement, would come on Friday, and with the use of aggressive form of prostate cancer, hormone sensitive, but
I can't wait for the liberals to talk about how fucked up the left is for saying they don't care, myself included, that we don't care that Biden has prostate cancer.
President Biden, as you guys pointed out, Jake and Alex's book just came out. It's getting a lot of attention, a lot of reflection on his decision to run again, and that the rehashing of all of that can't be pleasant for him. But this supersedes all of that, obviously, and he's not a stranger to medical crises. He dealt with 2 brain aneurysms earlier in his life, and almost lost his life as a result of that, and was able to soldier through that. He obviously has experienced a lot of tragedy in his life as well, with the loss of 2 children, one by car accident, his wife, his first wife, and of course the death of his son, Beau. Joe Biden is the unluckiest lucky man on the planet. He's lived an incredible life of service, years of it. But he's also experienced untold tragedy, and I just, whatever your political persuasion, whatever your feelings are about how his career ended, whatever you think, this is a good and decent man who has served his country, and we're all pulling for him.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this comes at a time where there is so much and continued attention placed on his mental acuity and stability. as well as ahead of this book release. And you mentioned there's been a lot of discussion about it. His medical condition now, his announced medical condition now, do you believe that silences or delays a lot of conversations about his, last year and a half of his presidency for now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think those conversations are going to happen, but they should be more muted and set aside for now as he's struggling through this.
I thought it was curing cancer, not getting it, dude. What happened? He said he was going to cure cancer, Jack.
It shouldn't be stunning because prostate cancer is so common among men at his stage in life. Most men, if they live long enough, deal with prostate cancer. But and it's great news that they think that it's manageable, but jarring nonetheless. The thing, Fred, is that people who serve in these offices, they sort of become embedded in our lives, and and this is a reminder that no one's immortal, and so it's jarring. And I had the opportunity to serve with Vice President Biden for 2 years in the White House.
I can't believe that he's the one who got it, and not like Dick Cheney and everybody else too.
Of the concerns about health, Bo's health. Later on, when I was working as a consultant to the campaign, Bo's health came to the fore, and I just feel for the family, because it's one more thing.
Why do they glaze him so much even now? What do you mean, dude? This is the primary directive of mainstream news, is to whitewash and launder the reputation of war criminals once they are on the verge of death or after they pass.
Anna Navarro, who
it's a major part of how this works.
Former President Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, were on The View last week. Anna, jarring is the word that David Axelrod just used. How would you describe how this news hits, given that yours was one of the last big interviews with him last week ahead of his diagnosis?
Look, I
jarring.
think jarring is the word.
Jarring is the word. He's already dead. He's basically been propped up.
Somebody you love or you
He's basically been propped up with a stick up his ass that keeps his spine erect for the past multiple years at this point. What do you mean? He's been dead. What are we talking about?
With fear, it comes with
it's not jarring.
Uncertainty, wanting to figure out what the plan is, what the next steps are, what the possibilities are for treatment. There's so many questions that come with that one diagnosis. I will tell you, one of the things that I know Joe Biden has going for him is his very strong faith, his incredible optimism.
His brain is doo-doo. He doesn't even know what any of this is.
Strength of family that have gone through so much together. He's got a loving wife of decades and decades and decades. They have gone through so many ups and downs. He's got children and grandchildren, a sister, just such a wide array of people who love him and will be with him at a time like this. And I think it's part of the reason Bo's cancer, the accident with his first wife that cost the life of his first wife and his baby daughter. It's part of the reason why Joe Biden is a compassionate, decent man that we know. And it's part of the reason why he doesn't lose his optimism, because he knows that from sometimes the depths of sorrow and the biggest...
He's neither a compassionate nor a decent man. This is bullshit. He is neither a compassionate nor decent person.
The Joe Biden I've known for almost 3 decades is a man who I know will fight, is a man who will have people who love him in his corner, is a man who will have the best medical advice. And these are things that he does not take for granted, because he knows not every American has the best medical advice and the best medical treatments available. And he knows not every American has the family structure that he has. And I think that's why he tried so hard to bring health care to Americans, and why time and time again we saw him show his heart to America. We saw him hug people who had diagnoses like this. We saw him hug family members who had lost somebody because of everything he has gone through. So, you know, I just join, I think, most Americans, hopefully all Americans, in praying for him and wishing him well, and knowing that prostate cancer today, many forms of prostate cancer are very treatable, and you can have many more years of life afterwards. I have dealt with it in my family, and I know, I know Joe Biden hasn't given up his entire life. He's not going to give up now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you talk about his strength in his faith and in his family. He's a devout Catholic. Jill Biden was there on the set with him as he joined you and the other ladies on The View. I mean, speak to me about, about your recollection, even during that interview, of how I just remember one moment where she really stepped in and chimed in to help underscore, his commitment to public service and his record, and his record to truth. Talk to me about what that moment was like as she, not necessarily completing his sentences, but trying to complete the narrative of who Joe Biden is.
Well, I think a lot of us who are married know that it's not infrequent for spouses to complete each other's sentences. I also think Jill Biden is Joe Biden's strongest advocate, unconditional love of so many decades. And I think, I think the last year, all of the attacks on him, the gossip, the suppositions, all of these things, I think were very hurtful to her as a wife, as a spouse who supports and loves her husband. And so, I think that's what you saw come out. And I think we've all seen Joe Biden, because Joe Biden has been a public servant his entire adult life, my entire adult life. Since I've been in this country, Joe Biden has been part of the arena. He's been in the Senate. He's been a vice president. He's been a president. And I think we've all seen him age. I've known him. I am a friend of Joe Biden's, and I have known him for 25, 30 years. And certainly the man who was at The View 2 weeks ago is not the man that I knew 20 years ago. We've seen him age. We've seen his steps become more faltering. We've seen his voice lose some of his strength. But throughout all of it, it's always been the same good, decent public servant, committed to America, committed to democracy.
Yeah, Connor clocked
Joe
it,
Biden,
dude. We got Joe Biden dying before Grand Theft Auto 6.
Anna Navarro, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your viewpoint here as we're all just learning of this announcement coming from former President Joe Biden's office that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. That diagnosis coming on Friday, and in that statement saying that it is
Olivia Giuliana crashing out
for joining us, and that his diagnosis is a hormone-sensitive condition which does allow for
she's saying she's crashing out and saying all those who spent the past week shaming him have been shaming the man with cancer instead of the felon deporting children with cancer. First of all, people didn't even know that he had cancer. And secondly, that his cancer diagnosis doesn't change the dynamic at all. His selfishness and his interest in the continuation of dead Palestinian children unironically contributed to the Trump victory. So if you hate the orange man, and if you say orange man bad, you have to remember that Joe Biden's ineptitude and his selfish interest in maintaining his grip of power is directly responsible for orange man winning power, okay? There is no like, wow, I hope you feel good about yourself. Like, yeah, dude, I don't feel good. You want to know why I don't feel good? Because there is no karmic justice on this planet. There is no justice whatsoever, and there's certainly no karma, no karmic justice whatsoever, because Joe Biden has seen the entirety of his life. He went all the way up into his 90s. He actually became the president. He oversaw some of the worst American foreign policy decisions. He oversaw the undermining of international rule-based order directed by Joe Biden himself. so much death and so much destruction. And he opened up the floodgates of Donald Trump for a second term. So no, I don't care that he had he got prostate cancer at the age of 90. Okay? Get the hell out of here. And this is before we even talk about his track record leading up to his election.
This far advanced, meaning Gleason 9 metastasized to the bone, the 5-year survival rate is somewhere between 30 and 40%. Again, depending on how well he responds to therapy. One of the questions on everyone's mind, and you just heard this from the reporter, is what about last year's PSA? You know, this was found by physical examination, by a prostate exam. A lot of times we find an elevation in prostate-specific antigen, a PSA, and then we go after it, get an MRI. I mean, he must have had the best possible care here. I'm a little taken aback that it's this far advanced and very, very concerned about it.
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask you. This is a former president of the United States. He's supposed to be getting, as you say, the best medical care in the world. And yet, you know, just a few months after he leaves office, this prostate cancer is advanced enough that it has metastasized to the bone. That's just not good.
No, and we don't have enough information for me to be sure of the following statement, but I want everyone to know that the PSA, though, I think it's a really great test, and I do it on every male over the age of 45. Sometimes it can be low, and you still could have this. It's not 100%. I'm not saying his was low. It wasn't written as I don't recall it being indicated there. But if it's high, you go after it. And again, to reach the point of symptoms, we most of the time we can diagnose it before. Although, you know, it may very well be that he's hormone responsive, and that's what...
As a casual lurker, I will have to step away from you. Your level of crassness is worth unsubscribing. Oh no. Only logged in to let you know I think you're very researched, opinionated, politically astute, and extremely crass. Yeah, don't worry. Goodbye.
At this point.
It is, as you say, one of the most treatable forms of cancer, but you have to catch it fairly early, right?
Well, you have to catch it if you catch it while it's still within the capsule, within the prostate itself, it's curable most of the time. When it's metastasized, like here to the bone, much less so. And again, this aggressive, very, very concerning, means that it probably spread pretty fast. They might try to radiate that lesion they found on the bone. They're definitely going to give hormone therapy here. They'll know more in a few months about how responsive it is. When the goal is to get it before it leaves the prostate. When it's left the prostate, it becomes much more difficult to cure.
Dr. Siegel, stay with us for just a moment. We want to check in with senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy. Peter, obviously you were there at the White House for the full run of the Biden administration. Are you as surprised as I am at this news regarding the former president?
That is because every week that passes makes it all that more, all the more less likely for him to be off the ballot. Okay? He is trying to crawl, not towards the finish line being November 5th. He's trying to crawl to the convention. Remember, these are some of the dirty tricks that this war criminal old man pulled off in an effort to ensure that there wasn't enough time to replace him. Okay? When his brain was dookie, him and all the people surrounding him actively tried to make sure that he could go, he could basically make it to the next step in the process so that no one could replace him, so that he would be the one who runs against Donald Trump. And being November 5th, he's trying to crawl to the convention, which is so fucking gross. Once people recognize that reality, I suspect they'll be a little bit more angry. I don't think people have noticed that yet. I've been saying this now since the debate. He is literally trying to desperately get to the convention so it becomes a matter of it's not even a question at that point. Because every day that passes by where Joe... Is it just me or are you being way less crass than you could be? Yes, I am. I'm being way less crass than I normally would be because I know that a lot of liberals are going to be in their fifis and they're going to turn around and look for anyone to yell at that they possibly can to try and position themselves as the real anti-Trump people, not realizing that their actions, the actions of Joe Biden led to Donald Trump. They just don't want to recognize that, because then the party that they maintain loyalty to will be the wrong party here. That's it.
Do you think that Joe Biden really would have been able to perform as president all the way through January 2029 when he would be 86?
Yes, I thought that back then. I still think that, but I don't know that. When people ask me, did I know this or did I know the other? And the fact of the matter is, no, I didn't. And that's, you make my point here. So it's not all about age. I've seen people develop Alzheimer's when they're in their 30s and 40s.
Ay, ay, ay.
So it's not about age. It's about the ability to do the job. And I never saw anything that allowed me to think that Joe Biden was not able to do the job. Just that simple.
The debate didn't make you concerned about whether or not he could do the job?
Absolutely it did. I never saw any of that. I didn't see the tapes from her interview. And I watched that debate, and you and I talked about it. And yes, I was concerned. Now, the question is this a condition or is this an incident? And I have had incidents when I was looking for my glasses and had them on.
Yeah, bro, you should also quit. Like, what are we doing? Yes, you are also entirely too old.
So you have these kinds of incidents, and that's the question is. And then remember, a lot of us were a bit concerned about his schedule in the run-up to the debate. He took 2 overseas trips, came back, and started preparing for that debate. And I called it at the time preparation overload, because they were cramming into a 4 or 5 day period the preparation for this debate after taking 2 overseas trips, which I thought was taxing in and of itself. And so these kinds of concerns are out there, but none of us thought that there was anything here that created any suspicions of any prolonged condition.
Are you scared of being yelled at by liberals, or do you find some value in being more tempered? You fell off, Onk. I don't care. I'm tired and I'm angry, and I don't think that him getting cancer is even justice. Okay, it is not even a fraction of what Joe Biden deserves. Okay, that's it. And now everyone is going to act like he's already dead. Our campaign bent over backwards to accommodate them. The VP broke on Biden with Gaza. She met them. Senior leadership met with them. Uncommitted leadership told us they knew the VP was better than Biden and Trump, but they needed to win so they could rationalize their antics. Yeah, this guy is former director of rapid response for Kamala Harris, formerly delivering words on behalf of Joe Biden, still defending the Kamala Harris campaign. Joe Biden, outside of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, Joe Biden is perhaps the second most responsible party for Donald Trump. Okay? Kamala Harris is a close third, and her campaign is a close third, but Joe Biden is literally the second most responsible party for Donald fucking Trump. So if you hate Donald Trump, as I do, you have to recognize that reality. If you don't recognize that reality, you are deluding yourself.
Try to keep himself as healthy as possible. He had a trainer that was coming over to the White House twice a week or something like that. In the morning, he had to get special permission to use a Peloton because of the network. They don't like to have extra Wi-Fi networks in the residence of the president. And so it is a very sad diagnosis. And it's worth pointing out, he just formed a personal office. We didn't hear anything from them for the first couple months.
Who's the most responsible party for Donald Trump? Obviously, Donald Trump is most responsible, and the Republican Party is most responsible for Donald Trump. He is Donald Trump himself. But the second most responsible party in this situation is Joe Biden, due to his ambition, due to his horrible management, due to his lack of interest in stepping aside. He did this. We're talking about Trump 2 chatters. We're not talking about fucking Hillary Clinton. Okay, that already happened. Hillary Clinton already did this once. Living in the aftermath of that disastrous consequence of Trump 1, the Democratic Party should have recognized the real threat that Trump 2 presents, as I did, as many others did, and forced Biden out, forced Biden to step aside. But instead, they propped up Biden at a time when myself and many other people could see that he was senile all the way back in 2019, all the way back in 2020. There were people who actually rang the alarm bells, if you remember. People like, what's the Texas guy? Castro. It was, here, look at this.
Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered.
September 12, 2019, here you have Julian Castro literally questioning Biden's senility in 2019.
My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Are you
forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
Yeah, they packed his ass up for that, by the way. The Democratic Party and its machine is so nefarious that they saw this as a major threat to the one guy that actually was saying the truth on that stage, because they saw Biden as the only option to rally around, against Bernie. They were so terrified. Of Bernie Sanders potentially coming out of that primary as the victor and having to change the trajectory of the Democratic Party in a way that actually is progressive, in a way that moves towards an ambitious social democratic expansion of welfare and social safety nets, that instead of that, they literally turned around and they were like, we have to do everything we can to make sure that this does not happen. And Brandon was the guy that they presented as the alternative. He had the name recognition. He was Obama's vice president. He was the best possible person to do this. And the media offered multiple billions of dollars worth of organic and native advertising after a predictable victory that came in from South Carolina. All of this played a role in Biden actually seizing tremendous victories on Super Tuesday, changing the tide of the primaries. They all knew he was old and decrepit, and yet they still pushed him. They still pushed him aggressively, and then they maintained this idea that Biden was perfectly fine, and he had incredible motivation. He was not senile. His brain was totally fine. Here's Matt Stoller correctly pointing out, Democratic insiders know Biden has cognitive decline issues. They joke about it. They don't care. Neera Tandon, this is beneath you. Block. Folks, this is the only way to handle this nonsense. The Sanders outreach continues, I see. I wonder why you're losing. Anna continued, in light of what has come out, it is painfully obvious President Biden should not have run. He said his party played too much deference to party leaders, not to the old guard, to the advisors, and needed to be more independent. Yeah, the Democratic Party played the role that it always is supposed to play, the role that it's perhaps most equipped to play, which is to present a real hurdle against any sort of real left politics. They did that. They shut off any kind of ambitious social democratic option because that was terrifying for them. And in that process, Biden mismanaged the country and Biden mismanaged the country, was a horrible communicator at a time when there needed to be a uniting figure. Pair that up with negative real wage growth for almost 2 years under the Brandonian leadership, and also to perfectly tie that up with the endless genocide of the Palestinian population in real time that every American could see, and a genuine inability to address such problems, a genocide that we are actually paying for with our tax dollars. Biden oversaw all of that, refused to drop out, refused to recognize the writing on the wall, and handed the keys of the castle to the Republicans.
To his lifestyle and his maybe condition or feeling, I guess you could say, versus some that are a little more uncomfortable. Can you take us through those, Doctor?
Well, as I was saying, taking the prostate out has now reached a proportion where it's very much easier. You can do it without blood loss usually through a robot, through a small incision in the abdomen, and remove the whole prostate with robot arms in a matter of an hour or two. And recovery, you could even go home the next day or even the same day. That's dramatic improvement. On top of that, radiation has gotten a lot more pinpoint and better tolerated. You can get a lot of irritation from radiation, but it's totally different than it used to be, and they might want to radiate the bone. In terms of hormone treatment, since the White House has already revealed that that it's hormone responsive, which to me means they think it will respond to anti-testosterone treatments, including Lupron and maybe Casodex. That is good news in that they expect it to be able to shrink and to shrink the metastasis. The other potentially good news is they didn't seem to find it anywhere else. So the biggest side effects I worry about with the Lupron or with the anti-hormone therapy is fatigue. It causes a lot of fatigue, and I'm concerned about pain from that metastasis. I'm concerned about the urinary symptoms he's currently experiencing. He could go into urinary retention. But they may be able to prevent that by treating quickly.
Ironically enough, he should have been on finasteride, is correct, considering his fucking hairline and how abysmal it is. Not exactly sure why he wasn't already on finasteride, as your boy is. Finasteride is FDA approved for your hairline, but it also, its primary function is to shrink your prostate to avoid prostate cancer.
Private docs, not a consensus whether to do a PSA over the age of 80. From either the American Urological Association or the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, they tend to recommend against it in such an elderly person. I believe in it. I always do it in elderly people because my philosophy towards medicine, John, is I want to know what's going on so I can figure out how to pursue it. You know, you don't have to biopsy everyone based on a number, but the number is good to know. I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting he did or didn't have that test, but that is a useful test.
I am clearly not a doctor. That's why we're talking to you, Dr. Siegel. But when the statement says that the cancer appears to have metastasized to the bone, that sounds kind of ominous to me. I mean, bone cancer, I know, can be very painful. If it's in the bone, can you stop it?
Well, hopefully they could stop it if it's so testosterone dependent by the hormone therapy and hopefully by radiation. The 5-year survival rate when it's this far spread, and that's not even including how aggressive it is 30 to 40%. We wish it were a lot higher than that. You know, that's with the most modern treatments available. I wouldn't say it's ominous, but I'd say it's very, very concerning and clearly a life-threatening situation.
All right. Dr. Mark Siegel, our Fox News senior medical analyst. Thank you. Let's bring in Jeff Mason, the White House correspondent for Reuters. Jeff, again, it's been less than 4 months, I believe, if I'm counting on my fingers right, since Joe Biden left the White House, and now we're getting this pretty surprising diagnosis of prostate cancer that has metastasized. Your thoughts?
Well, number one, heartbreaking for the former president and for his family. And so, you know, I think even if you're a neutral reporter who's covered a president or anyone, you would extend your sympathies and best wishes to them. And I certainly do. I think from a political angle, it will absolutely, when you set aside the realities of the health issues that he is now dealing with, which is private, but also a story as a former president, it will also raise questions again about his decision to run for re-election. A lot of those questions were focused on his mental acuity, but just his age, of course, also means
don't fucking scale back on this, dude. This is the Reuters White House correspondent. Okay, this person obviously Fox News is biased on this, but they're correct.
Some of those conversations, just as some of those have been rehashed in the recent days, as new
the
books
person
about
speaking is not biased.
Come out.
Yeah, and as the conversations that he had with special counsel
but the
Robert
news
Hur
programming is
are released, there have been calls, especially among Republicans, for an investigation into, you know, who knew what about the president's condition, because clearly he wasn't answering questions well in those snippets of audio that have been released. Do you think that this diagnosis in any way changes the equation? Does it bring more sympathy forward for the former president and cause people to just kind of say, well, let's back off a little bit?
I think it's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but certainly I think the American people and people in general, when they see somebody facing a diagnosis with this, have sympathy. And I'll be interested to watch how that sympathy manifests itself in terms of how people respond on Capitol Hill from both parties. And certainly to your question, if there's a response on the Republican side that is more sympathetic and leading to backing off from the investigations that you were just referring to, then that would be a notable change.
Obviously, most of us get physicals each year. I get an annual physical. Maybe you do as well. For a president, Dr. Siegel was saying that his last annual was in 2024. I mean, is it an annual event for the president, or do they consider doing it more often for the most powerful person in the world?
It is absolutely an annual event. That doesn't mean you don't get checkups more often. And certainly the President of the United States has a doctor traveling with him, as far as I know, at all times. I mean,
remember a month ago when an article came out saying that Biden wanted to help Dems and they avoided him? Now they have to address this against their will because they do not want to be associated with him. That's how bad a decision he made.
It happens once a year, and it happens at once.
I think Democrats should be ruthless and be like, yeah, he was like, they shouldn't be. I mean, they are going to use flowery language to whitewash and launder his reputation. But this article almost certainly came out after his diagnosis. The Bidens want back in? No. That is insane. No way. Do we know exactly when the diagnosis came out? Because that is so psychotic. If he knew he had like prostate cancer and he's still like, I'm coming back in, Jack. I'm sick. I'm sick in the head.
Like these are appropriate for politics. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. I mean, we're all human beings, and we feel for the former president because a diagnosis of cancer, especially cancer that appears to have spread, is very sobering and certainly very disturbing, I guess you could say.
Absolutely, and I fully agree with you about that sympathy.
Launch
and
me
I would
into the
extend mine
suburbs,
again too.
Jack.
It's not something you want to see happen to anyone, be they a leader in public life.
Yeah, it's just like it's yet another idiotic moment where the Democrats will look so silly, will look so stupid if they entertain this, especially because that association will continue with Biden, and that association will remind average Americans what they saw and the inconsistency of what they heard from the Democrats in terms of Biden's fucking brain processing power. This is why I'm saying, like, just say, oh, it's cancer is really mean and really sad, and then leave it at that. If you talk about how wonderful of a statesman he was, then all of a sudden you're just going to keep reminding people. You're all of a sudden going to keep reminding people that, like, you defended his fucking diminished capacity. And it only further, it only serves as further evidence that you are an unserious person, only interested in maintaining your grip of power. Kamala would have become president if he had run and won, if he died in office. I'm not so certain about that either. CNN says the 16th article was 2 months ago. Yeah, no, I don't. The article doesn't match up with the timeline. He said that, and then he found out that he has cancer. That's what happened.
The oldest former living president until he passed away just a few months ago. He experienced amazing health, but not everyone is that lucky. And Joe Biden's mother was very, had a very long life, and he's been very healthy.
You talking about people remembering, but how many people remember Trump's lies, though? Dude,
to address.
You have to remember, the people that are pro-Trump don't give a shit that he's lying. They're stupid, and they're in a fucking cult. Okay? We're talking about independents. We're talking about, like, average Americans, people who don't vote, and people who do vote, but for the Democratic Party, even if they hold their nose and vote, okay? There is no way to convince the Republicans. Who cares what they think? They're an insane death cult at this point. They look at the way they handled the tariff stuff. Look at the way they operated within the tariff shit, where they would regularly turn around and be like, nah, it's actually tariffs are awesome. Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, now that you took away the tariffs, art of the deal, baby. Like, you can't have a normal conversation with these people. You can't have normal expectations from these people. They are fucking insane. It's also a problem that is plaguing the Democratic Party. Age and the diminished capacity of the elderly in the gerontocracy that is the Democratic Party is legitimately one of the most visible parts of this party. That's what's so crazy about it. Like, it's one of the Democrats, I always say, have a crisis in branding because they don't have any sort of discernible policies that you can point to in the way that, like, Bernie does, right? Bernie's old as fuck too. Absolutely worst double bind here where they show that Biden willfully retained classified documents and comes across too senile for a jury to convict him. The right will make mincemeat out of this. They'll play up the double standard in courts and harp on how old Biden is. Yeah, this was when the Robert Hur report first came out. That's what I said. And that's precisely what the Republicans did, by the way. The Democrats are in a crisis of branding, if you are to look at it in sociopathic terms, I guess. Okay? Their branding crisis revolves around their lack of interest in being associated with any sort of real progressive policies that they genuinely are pushing for. But then outside of that, this is the type of shit that they're associated with. Just like defending old people because they're in power, with the Dianne Feinsteins of the world, with the Brandons of the world, you know? Is terrible.
Out of the presidential race, of course, he has contended that he believes he was indeed fit to serve. And I want to read to you a little bit from a letter from his former physician.
Yeah, you only predict them correctly because they get their ideas from right here. Yeah, I'm a Republican opposition research merchant.
He has sleep apnea, which is being treated. He has non-valvular atrial fibrillation. He's being treated for high cholesterol as well as acid reflux and seasonal allergies. Of course, we have asked the White House, the Trump administration, as well as a spokesperson for Dr. Biden, the First Lady, for comment and reaction to this concerning news. Some signs of optimism, of course, that this type of prostate cancer can be responding to, it says it appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management. But again, quite concerning that it has
She's
indeed
87.
spread
This
to
was who
his
was going
bones.
to
the former president has maintained a relatively
leader of the
low
House
profile
Oversight
since
Committee.
leaving office in January, but we have started to see him
After the
reemerge
previous
on the world
one,
stage. He attended
after the previous
funeral.
one, literally had cancer and couldn't do his job because of cancer. Remember, Nancy Pelosi actively undermined AOC's chances of being the leader of the House Oversight Committee. And the Democrats listened to Speaker Emeritus.
Curing cancer is something that is so near and dear to the former president.
From her
Back
hospital
during
bed,
the
Nancy
Obama
Pelosi
administration,
pushed
after
for
his
it.
son Beau Biden died of glioblastoma and aggressive brain cancer, the then vice president established the Cancer Moonshot, which was an initiative with a goal of ending cancer as we know it. It was reestablished in 2022. So again, very concerning news, some signs of optimism, but we will be tracking this quite closely, reaching out to all of our sources, Jessica, and bringing you the latest updates as we get them.
Yeah, and Betsy, again, just underscoring, this is breaking news. We're still seeing this all kind of play out. But what about public support for the former president? I noticed some people are starting to make public comments on this.
Yeah, we are starting to see an outpouring of public support. Again, we haven't heard anything just yet from the White House. We have asked for reaction, but we are going to be watching all of these, it's shocking news, and hearing from some of the president's top allies, advisors, former staffers, those that I'm talking to on text message, all exhibiting a lot of shock and concern and really sadness about their former boss, just writ large. Really very concerned about what this news could portend, of course, what his treatment is going to look like, and how this is going to progress.
Certainly, yeah, no, this is shocking news, especially for those who are close to him.
Piers Morgan is in his feelings. I'm going to block anyone I see, and there's already a lot of this vile crap flying around, mocking, celebrating, or playing partisan politics with Joe Biden's health news. The man has served his country for 50 years and is fighting for his life. Show some bloody respect. Yeah, he served his country for 50 years to do what?
Well, first of all, Jessica, my thoughts are with the former president. Anyone who's ever heard a physician tell them that they have cancer understands how uncertain and disorienting and terrifying these times can be. So my thoughts go to the former president and his family. So prostate cancer is extraordinarily common. About 1 in 8 men in this country will get prostate cancer during their lifetime. And the outlook I think depends a lot on the cell type and how responsive it is to hormone therapy. What we've heard so far, sort of bad news and good news. The bad news is that his Gleason score, which is how the pathologists grade the aggressiveness of the tumor by looking at it under the microscope, was quite high. The Gleason score goes from 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst, and his tumor was graded as a 9, so a very aggressive form. The second adverse diagnostic information that we've received is the fact that it's now already metastatic to bone, so it's no longer contained in the prostate.
Yeah.
So this is not something.
Have some
that
bloody
can be cured
respect.
simply
Gaza's
by
last
doing a
hospital for 10,000 cancer
prostatectomy.
patients shuts down due to reported Israeli strike.
Metastases, prostate cancer is often treated initially with removing the prostate, but that's not an issue here because the cells have already spread into other parts of the body, and we're told that it's spread to the bone. But there are treatment options. Where the good news is that we're told that the former president's particular tumor appears to be sensitive to hormone therapy. The male hormone testosterone causes prostate cancers to grow. So blocking testosterone is
For the record, a lot of people in the chat are saying, well, Palestinians have no access to cancer treatment because of Joe Biden and now Donald Trump, right? And before people say, oh, this is like saying there's starving children in Africa, make no mistake, okay? Biden is directly responsible for that. You are not directly responsible for the gross distribution at a time of food abundance, okay? You are not directly responsible for that. Whereas Biden is almost single-handedly directly responsible for Israel's endless bombing campaign, as he had every opportunity to shut it down early on and refused to do so, so much so that he allowed this election to be lost to Donald Trump.
And I just want to make sure I'm understanding when they say it is hormone sensitive, and that's a good news. You're saying if you can block that testosterone, which is of course a hormone, that can
they're going to block Biden. They're going to force feminize Brandon.
Or they hope for the fact that it would give them a little more control over that cancer.
Yeah, and I think in an 82-year-old patient, what you're really trying to do is control the cancer, prevent the cancer from spreading more widely, spreading to organs like the liver or the lungs, and trying to control it for as long as you can. And being hormone sensitive gives them the option of using these androgen blocking therapies.
And then the other piece of information that you were going through as well was this information that it has spread to his bones, that it has metastasized. When you hear that, that does sound daunting. What is that painful?
Yeah,
what else does that what else does that mean for the patient in this case?
Yeah, it can certainly cause bone pain, right? And once the tumor starts affecting the bones, particularly the long bones, particularly bones of the legs and things like that, and back. But the more important aspect of the fact that it's metastatic to bone is that it really does change, or metastatic period, is that it does change the prognosis. Sometimes people with early
prostate cancer is generally not fatal, with a 5-year survival rate of over 95% for most patients. Assuming ex-President Biden is under close surveillance, his likelihood of dying from natural causes is higher. Of course, the specific subtype matters. In patients with Gleason score of 9, the 5-year survival rate is typically around 50 to 70. I thought it was 30%, not 50 to 70%. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not,
And when oncologists talk to patients, it's important for the patients to understand that they are not a statistic. And if they look at Google and they look at that number, and they look at a number that says, for instance, that 5-year survival rate is 33%, that can be very, very dispiriting. But what I think a lot of doctors would tell a patient, what I would tell the patient if I were an oncologist, is that statistics are for 100 people. And what they should only be interested is, what is their outlook? What are the features of their tumor and their overall condition? Where does that point them? And to me, it sounds like there's a lot to do here. And so I would, if I were involved in the president's care, and I am not, I would tell them, look, we have a lot to do now. We'll take things one at a time, and we'll pick a comprehensive cancer center to help structure your treatment. And I'm sure that's what President Biden's team is doing. They're looking for a comprehensive cancer.
Like, I don't, God, not only do I not care, because this is happening in the backdrop of Biden's actions and his gross ambition to continue starving the Palestinian population and killing them directly, has led to tens of thousands of Palestinians not being able to get this kind of medical care coverage. But Biden also, for 50 years, was a very ambitious person, was able to basically hold on to the grips of power and became the president, and use that opportunity to do a metric ton of evil. And on top of that, he is going to have platinum healthcare coverage. There are people in this country right now that have cancer, that have the same type of cancer that fucking Joe Biden has, that are spending their last moments not with their fucking families, but instead talking to insurance agents, okay? Like, who we show what level of support and civility to is so busted in this country, is so broken. Biden directly lied, by the way. Remember when he said he was going to do public option? That was a fucking lie. Biden directly ran against Bernie because the signature policy of the Bernie Sanders populist left was Medicare for all. Never forget that. And every single person that also was antagonistic to said Medicare for all, the ambitions of moving towards Medicare for all, rallied around Biden. This is what the Democratic Party did, knowing full well that his brain was doo-doo. So yeah, it's very, very, very difficult for me to have even a fraction of sympathy for this fucking war criminal, even if you are to cover it from the perspective only of domestic policies, even if you think like Palestinians are nothing and they deserve less and they are deserving of their fucking of their fate because you're a disgusting little freak, a bloodthirsty little monster, okay? Then even on the domestic agenda front, what the Democratic Party did and what the Democratic Party did specifically in terms of placing Brandon as a hurdle against like real leftist policies that the Democrats never wanted to subscribe to, his legacy and his presidential run is so that you couldn't get any health care whatsoever. Your ass spent years shitting on how old Joe Biden is. Yeah, and so many people also turned around and said I was wrong for this, you know, for saying the truth. Anyway, now let's get back to some other news. I've gone all around. Let's look at the Eurovision shit. There was a pro-Palestine protester detained at Eurovision final during Israel's performance. I don't really watch Eurovision. I didn't watch it when I was in Turkey. I'm not really all that interested in it, even though, I mean, and it's not even because I'm not, a music listener per se. I just don't think it's, I mean, who cares? But, obviously, Eurovision is now basically become an opportunity for Israel to try and do reputation laundering, and they do it by force. They do it through trickery, and they do it by force. It's so clear. Like, that's the only thing. That is the only thing that people care about with Eurovision. How Israel's performance sounded like at the arena of Eurovision 2025. The entire arena was screaming. The entire arena was booing, making noise, not in a positive way, but in a negative one. And yet, obviously, the TV shut off the crowd noise. Not only did they shut off the crowd noise, but they made it illegal to bring Palestinian flags in. They apprehended people who were waving Palestinian flags. And also, Israel spent a shit ton of money doing marketing for this Eurovision process. And I assume a lot of people also participated in a lot of people also participated in this fucking like bullshit telephone voting process. Let's take a look at what the soft take had to say about Israel's participation in Eurovision.
Song contest as of late, especially this year. And it's not just because of the wacky outfits. While Israel faces mounting accusations of war crimes and international outrage,
I've seen so much. See, the general public actually likes Israel. You are just too online. Yeah, that's not the case. But the reason why they're doing that, the reason why they did that is so they can say that. The reason why pro-Israel people are like fucking freaking out about this and saying like, look at how wonderful this is. The world actually loves Israel is because they want to fucking create this air, this presence that like the world doesn't fucking despise Israel. They do. Make no fucking mistake. They do. You in this community are infinitely closer to the average person's perspective on Israel's death and destruction campaign in Gaza than whatever the fuck they try to present here.
they're still being given a global stage to rebrand themselves. Not through politics, but through dance and song. The good old move of art washing, when a nation uses culture, art, entertainment to distract from the reality and downplay human rights abuses. In this case, Israel is using the glitz and glam of Eurovision to present itself as the underdog, the victim, the voice of peace, all while carrying out atrocities in Gaza. Israel's contestant they've put forward this year is Yuval Raphael, an actual survivor from the Nova Festival attack.
Hello Eurovision fans, my name is Yuval Raphael and I will be representing Israel in the next Eurovision. I can't wait to see you all in Basel.
Now, let me just be clear that this isn't about dismissing the fear and trauma Yuval experienced. What I'm talking about is how Israel, in the 69th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest, has chosen a contestant whose very presence functions as just one enormous sob story. You know how American Idol sort of takes someone aside and gives them a little whisper in the ear? Those tears are dollar bills, alright? That is what this feels like, because not only does Yuval's persona and story of victimhood and resilience gets paraded around, the song she will perform just looks like a desperate attempt for a PR rebrand for the state of Israel. And, of course, Eurovision proves once again that its supposedly rule only seems to apply when it's convenient. But first, allow me to explain real quick what the Eurovision Song Contest is and how it works if you're unfamiliar. It would help grasp the not-so-subtle image makeover Israel is going for here. Because while it might seem like just another song contest, it is quite a cultural and political, whether they like it or not, spectacle watched by around 160 million people each year. And when it comes...
I've heard from pro-Trump people two things that reaffirm my position here. There are some like very aggressively pro-Trump people that I don't have direct relationship with, but like know people that are related to them. And from what I've heard from even their perspective, like not on Eurovision in general, but like they are also now anti-Israel. I mean, people who are like borderline QAnon, who are anti-Israel now. At the end of the day, people see death and destruction of children and they're like, this is fucked up. It's that simple.
Country like Israel takes center stage, especially in a year like this, there is a lot more going on than a fun and silly competition.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed delegations from all around the world, this event unites us all, crossing borders, crossing languages, creating a shared space.
So maybe you've seen some snippets of it and wondered, is that what goes on in Europe? You'd be correct. Once a year, singers, bands, musicians get all dressed up and represent their country to give a performance of a lifetime with an original song live on stage. Flags wave, the host country's electricity bill shoots through the roof, and just about every LED light in Europe gets wired to one stage. It was launched in 1956 by the European Broadcasting Union and was meant to unite post-war Europe through music. Countries vote for each other, usually it's neighboring countries, trade partners, and occasional political crushes. And eventually, a winner is crowned. And despite being called the Eurovision, there are still countries outside the geographic region of Europe that participate, like Australia and Israel. That's because any country that is a member of the European Broadcasting Union can participate. To win, a country with the highest number of points, and this is where Israel loves to play around a little, points are gotten from professional jurors from each country that vote for a country of their choice. That makes up for half of the total vote. And the other half is made...
Yeah, this is like... this is this is just a propaganda operation for Israel. It's just a way to like try and make it seem as though people love Israel, and they pump the individual like telephone votes. They just rig it so they can get a high placement year over year. It is a way for Israel to try and make it seem as though there is more support for Israel than there actually is. You're talking about countries, right? You're talking about countries that voted for Israel on Eurovision, countries that literally have European countries that have a very negative opinion of Israel historically, like Norway, that fucking voted for Israel. Get out of here. There was a historic number of people to the tune of 100,000 plus that marched to The Hague today in the Netherlands. Okay? It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's not real. It's just fucking completely rigged. And we just have to sit there and act like this is something that matters. Yeah, from what I understand, Eurovision is sponsored by Moroccan Oil, which is an Israeli company as well.
Fans voting through paid texts or phone calls, where individuals can vote for a maximum of 20 times. And like I said, this is the part where Israel can demonstrate its strong solidarity, turning bloodshed into ballads, headlines into harmonies.
Yeah, this is during her performance. And not only were they booing her the entire time, the way that they televised the broadcast, they shut off the crowd noise and pumped in, from what I understand, fake crowd noise of cheers. This is the rehearsal, not the finals.
Because when it came to the public vote for Israel in Eurovision 2024, just 7 months of responding to October 7th with a genocide, Israel received 323 public votes.
Yeah, the UK commentator said it's a mixed reaction. Not sure what you're hearing at home. Not only that, but also the Spanish broadcaster, the European Union Broadcasting Union, has threatened. Hold on. Why can't I pause this video? What the fuck? What the fuck is wrong with Twitter, man? The European Broadcasting Union has threatened to fine Spain's state broadcaster if its commentators reference Gaza during the Eurovision. It's a response after the Spanish commentators remembered Gaza when Israel's song was being introduced during the semifinal.
They will rise.
Yeah, they're saying that they reference this year, Radio Television Española has requested to Eurovision a debate on Israel's participation in the festival. The victims of the Israeli attacks in Gaza now exceed 50,000, and among more than them, 15,000 children, according to the United Nations. This is not a petition against any country. It is a call for peace, justice, and respect for human rights in line with international human rights. So this was the Spanish graphic before the show started. When human rights are at stake, silence is not an option. Peace and justice for Palestine. Yeah, bad move by them for posting that after being warned not to. Eurovision is not supposed to be political. Yeah. Dumbest guy on the planet. Belgium did something like this as well, with many tens of famous Belgian people who said they disagree with Eurovision and that they stand with Palestine. It's so funny because, like, I repeat this over and over again, but Israel, for many who refuse to pay attention to politics, I think they go, why do you care about Israel so much? But what a lot of people don't understand is that Israel is a perfect demonstration of what happens when something is unimaginably unpopular by the masses, but it's still being maintained at a time when, like, social media has exploded and democratized information sharing to a certain degree, with, you know, some negative consequences as well. But it's created this massive fissure between our institutions and our mainstream media operations in some respects in the United States of America, for example, or the BBC. It is directly placing the democratic wishes of the broader public, even in the Western world, at odds with the institutions of control, institutions of propaganda, and also our politicians. It is such an obvious fissure, a direct contradiction with the wishes inside of these nation states that are supposed to be the defenders of liberal democracy. It exposes the lack of interest in maintaining democracy in these Western liberal democracies, because they would rather show that corruption to every single citizen than to move even a little bit away from their undying, unconditional defense of Israel and its genocide of the Palestinians. That's it. That's what's going on here. I don't really know what Eurovision is, but Israelis tried to cheat for it and they still lost. I voted 60 times for Israel, 20 from international, 20 from UK, 20 from Australia. Yes, I have credit cards from 3 different countries. I voted 100 times, used 5 credit cards. Israel almost won Eurovision with a shitty song and pure propaganda. Killing humans is not enough for them. They also try to kill art. Yeah. So they cooked the books to the best of their ability as they, as this is one of the only mechanisms that they have to just do propaganda. But here was even Graham Norton's take while this was happening.
And I think the EBU will be breathing the largest sigh of relief that they're not faced with a Tel Aviv final next year.
Yeah, the EBU will be breathing the largest sigh of relief that they're not faced with a Tel Aviv final. I was wondering why nobody was posting the clip of Graham Norton said at Eurovision. He had the audacity to say before Yuval's performance that the entry continues to be controversial. And he let the home audiences know that there was slightly a mixed response in the hall. That's it.
On to song number 4 now, and it's the turn of Israel. Now, of course, their participation in the competition continues to be controversial. Fewer protests this year, but a mixed response at some of the rehearsals. Not sure what you're hearing at home. A slightly mixed response here in the hall.
Yeah, they zoomed in on like a couple pro-Israel people in the crowd to not show the full scope of anger and resentment inside of the arena. Again, it is a carefully crafted propaganda operation, but it doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change the depravity of Israel's actions. It doesn't change the analysis that many average people, citizens in these countries, feel towards Israel. Israel has officially become a fucking pariah state, and it does not matter. They are trying to manufacture consent. They are trying to manufacture an alternative reality that does not exist.
323 points.
And remember, Eurovision, without any contest whatsoever, swiftly banned Russia from participating after Russia's unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine, which is fair. It's fair to do. And yet Israel, for 2 years in a row now, while continuing its genocide, has been allowed to participate in Eurovision. So when people say, oh, this is not political, remember, it just means that like Israel has more institutional influence in the Western world than Russia does to be able to participate in these things, to engage in the act of art washing.
It seemed like their coordinated voting campaign worked out when using a song that frames Israel as the victim once again. It was honestly quite chilling to see how so many people voted for a country that has made Gaza to be the deadliest place on earth to be a child. And one could argue that maybe the performance was good. And to that, I just say no. So this is where things get interesting, because while Eurovision claims to be strictly non-political, the reality is that voting patterns and even song choices, especially in Israel's case recently, are often heavily shaped by politics. Despite massive protests, Israel put forward Eden Golan to perform in the Eurovision Song Contest.
Wow, I'm over the moon about the results. We got everything we ever wanted, and the fact that we were here was already the winning.
They actually didn't do it because of Russia's action. They did it because most countries were threatening to drop out. Their only reason for getting Russia out was because of loss of income from other contestants.
Place for us.
And protests, controversy, how have you sort of got through that?
I was focused on my goal, on representing us with pride. And nothing around really affected me.
Eden's song was originally called October Rain, which directly referenced the Hamas attacks and leaned hard into a one-sided narrative of Israeli victimhood. Organizers of the Eurovision Song Contest stepped in and asked for changes, citing Eurovision's ban on overtly political messaging. And in response, the official Israeli broadcaster stated, "Israel must sound its voice with pride and its head high and raise its voice in every world forum, especially this year." Yes, because what better year for patriotic flexing than 2024? The same year Israel was responsible for unaliving 16,456 Palestinian children. So a rewritten version was submitted and their song was renamed hurricane. We are flipping through weather reports trying to find something that sticks. Though that didn't stop the backlash and protests continued. Accusations of art washing mounted, artists threatened to boycott, and yet Israel was still greenlit to perform. And now we come to today. It's 2025. Israel hasn't exactly taken a day off in war crimes. You see the word genocide now being used by legal scholars, human rights groups, and at the International Court of Justice. Protesters are still protesting. And despite all of this, Israel is once again taking part in Eurovision. Last year, they tried to sneak in a song about the October 7th attacks, but that didn't work, so now this year they put a whole Nova Festival survivor from October 7th to perform for Israel and remind the people on why they started their quest on committing a genocide. Try and deny us of that, European Broadcasting Union. And they seem to have managed to navigate the Eurovision ban on political messages within the song itself this time. The lyrics aren't political on the surface, but arguably promote a certain narrative. They're filled with vague messages about loss, light, and healing. Lyrics like, everyone cries, don't cry alone, all the pain will go by, a new day will rise. Lines like these lean into emotional recovery, which can resonate with national trauma or the mourning of war casualties. And while these are universal themes, in the context of Israel, they often align with narratives of victimhood, even though they're committing a genocide. Another part of the lyrics contains, many waters cannot quench love, nor can the floods drown it, which is actually a quote from a Hebrew Bible passage, Songs of Songs 8:7, which is apparently a powerful metaphor to express the unconquerable and indestructible nature of love. Did you think you would land in Bible class when you clicked on this video? And while the passage itself is a beautiful expression of love, singing this while a nation associated with that religious text is engaged in a war crime-riddled conflict that has cost countless Palestinian lives is bonkers. The juxtaposition of love and conflict is just bonkers, man. That's propaganda through poetry. Now, in contrast to that, Iceland's contestant in Eurovision 2019, a rock band called Hatari, was penalized for holding a Palestinian flag.
And we go to France, our next country's France.
According to EurovisionWorld.com, the Icelandic broadcaster was fined 5,000 euros for holding the Palestinian flag. The contest organizers said that this gesture infringed their rules banning political gestures. Literally a Palestine.
Why is that a political gesture? I wonder. The recognition of Palestinians in Palestine is considered a political gesture, chat. It is a political gesture to recognize the humanity of the victims of genocide. Interesting. Of course they didn't do this with Ukrainian flags. Ukraine gets to participate in Eurovision. Palestine does not. It is the most overt, most shameful display of hypocrisy by Western nations. An ongoing atrocity and their lack of interest in doing anything meaningful to stop it.
Flag. It doesn't even say Free Palestine on it. So in 2019, a silent flag was too political. But in 2024 and 25, an entire song wrapped in Zionist symbolism is just art. This leaves us with the question. Is neutrality really neutral if it punishes the oppressed while platforming the powerful? It suggests that showing empathy for Palestinians is seen as controversial. So as a response, you will find some artists to find creative ways to show their solidarity with Palestinian suffering. Like Eric Sade. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Eric from Sweden did with discreetly wearing the keffiyeh. And of course, with the EBU being the fun bunch of bastards they are, they issued a statement regretting that Sade wore the scarf. We regret that Eric Sade chose to compromise the non-political nature of the event. Come on, dude. God forbid someone put a bit of cloth with a certain pattern to display his own cultural heritage, by the way. Thankfully, this Belgian politician wasn't afraid to call this out.
Hoe hypocriet is het dat Israël vandaag gewoon kan meedoen aan het Eurovisie Songfestival, terwijl er ondertussen op datzelfde Eurovisie Songfestival Palestijnse vlaggen en Palestijnse sjaals...
Very recently, Eurovision lifted the ban on Palestinian flags among the audience. Thank goodness for that, although performers may feature only official flags of the country they are representing in the contest. And in another incident, guest singer Madonna supposedly provoked controversy when two of her dancers appeared on stage with Israeli and Palestinian flags on their costumes. As a response from Israel's culture minister, Miri Regev, it was an error. Politics and a cultural event should not be mixed. Which is gobsmackingly hilarious because today Israel is trying to do just that more than any other contestant in this year and the last year. So I'm inclined to think that Miri Regev might have been talking about something else when talking about not being able to mix two things together. Another glaring double standard lies in how quickly Russia was banned from Eurovision in 2022 following its invasion of Ukraine. An appropriate and justified decision. Yet, somehow, that same logic doesn't apply to Israel, despite the staggering death toll and widespread international condemnation. However,
isn't it funny how all the way down to like dumbass slop tubers saying, oh, this is political, all the way to fucking Eurovision where nation states are complaining, something being considered political is always when it's a fucking non-state actor or a victim of a state actor. It's always political if it's like a marginalized community getting representation in video games. Call of Duty, not political. Call of Duty only becomes political when there's like female operators. Israel being invited while doing a genocide, not political. The mere mention of Palestinians, the victims of Israel genocide, political. Always the same principle, dude. Always.
thankfully, many people are not silent on the imbalance of justice here. Across Europe, there have been street protests, online campaigns, and growing calls for a boycott of Eurovision 2025. Over 70 former contestants and industry figures have signed open letters urging the European Broadcasting Union to take a stand. Yet, Israel remains in the competition. Why? Well, part of the reason why might be because one of their presenting partners is Moroccan Oil, an Israeli cosmetics brand, and has been an event sponsor since 2020. The official Eurovision site does have a part in their FAQ that's all about why Israel is still participating, and honestly, it would save everyone time if they could just be upfront and be like, guys, Moroccan Oil is a sponsor. Don't ruin this for us. Anyway, they put voices against genocide in an impossible position where if you push back, suddenly you're the one trying to cancel a survivor of a terrorist attack. Consider watching something else tonight. Stay loud because your voice...
Yeah, I don't care about that. Like, they're like, wow, you just don't want victims of the Nova attack to get a place. Like, yeah, I don't care. If their simple introduction to the event in and of itself is to launder the reputation of a country that's doing horrifying crimes on a daily basis, yeah, I don't give a shit. I don't care. What a cynical way to try and use identity politics like this. 61% of Eurovision fans in Britain said Israel shouldn't participate. 58% of all Britons, Israel shouldn't participate, shouldn't be allowed to compete. Eurovision fans, 61% said Israel shouldn't participate across the board. Ironically enough, seemingly Israel won all of these countries in the votes. They got like a shit ton of votes from all these different countries on the telephone votes. It's not that sophisticated of a propaganda operation, by the way. They're just simply pumping votes. It doesn't fucking matter.
Hey, everyone.
Anyway, let's move on to some greener pastures here, and let's talk about Anthony Fantano shitting on Tim Pool.
Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. It seems once again we have to come onto this channel and address a right-wing freak pretending to be a fan of music and art, or at least visibly struggling on their shitty YouTube channel and podcast to sort of like rationalize maybe the person they once were or the heart that maybe they have on some level, not really being copacetic with the psychotic, bigoted views they now have to hold for a job. Of course, I am talking about the one and only Tim Pool.
Bald on bald violence, by the way.
AKA Beanie Man. You know, if you've had the displeasure of seeing any amount of content from Tim's YouTube channel, you know that like a lot of other weird right-wing talking heads on the internet, he makes a lot of money and gets a lot of attention by virtue of commenting on with a lot of indignance, a lot of pop culture items that are either nominally or deeply offensive to those with right-wing views because, oh, it's woke or it's blasphemous or whatever. Enter in singer-songwriter Laura Jane Grace of Against Me fame, modern punk rock legend, many would claim, who recently did a little performance at a Bernie Sanders rally of like this silly ass acoustic sing-along song about essentially as a trans person feeling fucked by God, which, you know, if you have two brain cells to rub together, even if you haven't personally experienced what Laura Jane Grace is, you know, obviously describing in this song, you sort of like get the concept pretty easily that I am a trans woman. Personally, I feel kind of under fire socially with all of this hate being lobbed towards trans people, all of this bigotry. A lot of that bigotry tends to kind of skew as being very religious, or at least it's coded as such, hence the metaphor where she's feeling fucked by God. Now, apparently this performance may have gotten a little viral online in right-wing circles, made some people pissed off. Tim Pool goes on his show and says people are angry and pissed off and raging about things all the time just to have something to talk about on YouTube. So of course that's kind of like the lead into this whole reason for him talking about Laura Jane Grace in this video here.
A transgender singer is sexually graphic in front of a crowd of people, which I presume largely is adults, but it's a Bernie rally, so there's probably some kids there. Totally inappropriate.
If this were any other Tim Pool segment, and in many ways it is, there really wouldn't be much reason for me to talk about it, except for the fact that I find it hilarious that Tim spends a great deal of this video trying to validate his criticisms and basically provide some weight to his point of view here because he used to be a massive Against Me fan.
I am an OG fan. OG, of course, for those that don't know, means original gangster.
He even tries to impress
No, I am an OG fan. Original gangster. Oh my God.
Viewers of the video that Tim really knows what he's talking about and knows where he's coming from here because he used to know how to play all the songs on guitar.
You had the classic song Baby I'm an Anarchist, for which I can still play on the guitar. And then, of course, you had much better songs, in my opinion, like Pints of Guinness Make You Strong.
In fact, it's kind of funny because as he progressively talks about Laura Jane Grace and this song and like how big of a fan he once was, it seems like the number of Against Me songs he knows how to play on guitar like increases. First it was a bunch of songs, then it was like the Axl Rose songs, and then like, you know, he's listing other tracks too. He just knows the whole damn Against Me catalog.
And they have a song called Tonight We're Gonna Give It 35%, and that is, I can't remember which album it's off of, but I used to play it all the time. I'm pretty sure I can still play, so it's only 4 chords anyway. And it's about signing a record deal. What? We're gonna get signed to a major record deal and get $1 million? Let's go! And that's when I was like, hypocrites.
He even goes on to play a lick from an Against Me intro.
I can prove it. Here we go. Okay. Anybody who knows what that song is, you know exactly what song I was playing.
And I just find this very funny because like the time period that Tim describes in this video as far as like being into Against Me and how their music resonated with him at the time when they were originally hot with Axl Rose and so on and so forth. I was a big fan of the band at that same time. In fact, like I saw the band live way back then, and I had all the EPs on vinyl and liked some of the stuff they did on Fat Records not too long after that. And Tim is just like obsessed in this video with like proving how like hardcore of a fan he was, how deeply ingrained into like the Against Me sphere he was. He even goes on to sort of like brag like, oh yeah, you know, like I know people who knew or know Laura Jane Grace, you know, I don't know them personally, I don't got any beef, but like, you know, I know people who know people. And Tim like basically says all of this to build up to his argument that in his opinion, now he states this.
Also, saying you're hypocritical for signing with a record label is so funny. It's like, what the fuck are musicians supposed to do? Die? It's their job, dude. It's the dream of like every musician. I'd rather have, you know, punk musician signed with a record label than an independent commentary guy signed with the Russian Federation to do fucking propaganda. Like, one is directly impacting your output. So it's additionally crazy. He's like, yeah, they should have been not fake, like me, and gotten money from Russia to say Ukraine is the enemy of mankind.
That's fact. But then he also sort of like backpedals a bit. He's like, oh, I'm just saying, I'm just asking some questions. He goes on to argue that he feels that Laura Jane Grace is essentially just like pretending to be trans or transed herself for money and attention, and was entirely motivated by the fact that like Against Me was in a ton of debt and just needed money.
I would say that the honest take here, lead singer of Against Me, was in the gutter. The band was not doing really well. They had massive amounts of debt. They failed. And then I got an idea, trans. And then all of a sudden they saw a big bump.
Now, if you're an actual Against Me fan, you know how bullshit that argument is, because when you dig into the band's back catalog, like tracks as early as Disco Before the Breakdown do very much convey like a closeted queer experience point of view of some sort. So like that alone would instantly delegitimize any argument.
Bro, Fantano's such a fucking music nerd. It's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, that in and of itself probably shows that. Sure. But you know what else also shows that? The fact that that has never happened. No one has been like, oh, I'm going to trans myself for clout. It's so not a real thing that the only people that have done something similar to that are people like Steven Crowder and other Republican charlatans who can't find any person like transing themselves for clout. So they have to become the example. Why the fuck would anyone undergo the process of HRT for fucking clout? Like, there's way easier ways of gaining prominence and money than becoming persona non grata automatically, public enemy number one automatically, becoming a part of the 1% of the less than 1% of the fucking population that is straight up vilified every step of the fucking way for you know, living their goddamn truth. It makes no sense. There are so many hurdles beyond the structural hurdles of hormone replacement therapy. There are so many societal hurdles in your way that it is virtually impossible for someone to trans themselves for clout. Okay? And it's ironic because there used to be a very similar argument against gay people before trans people got into the crosshairs, when the point of contention was around like gay rights, right? Even though it was always LGBT, right? This was the argument that Republicans presented. They would say, oh, gay people, they're just doing it for fucking clout. What clout? Are you going to go suck a dick for clout? Like, oh, gay people are just gay for attention. I don't see you taking it up the butt or putting it in a man's butt for fucking attention. The fuck are you talking about? People do it because they love it, okay? It's that simple. I don't get it. I don't understand it. You literally couldn't be more wrong. Okay, that's the example that I'm using, which is Josh Sider or Steven Crowder are the only fucking people that actually trans themselves for clout, and they do it to prove the point that you can trans yourself for clout. But the very act of them transing themselves for clout unironically undermines the argument that they're making, which is that there are people that are doing this out there, but we couldn't find them, so we became the example. Then I guess you don't have an example. It's the same principle behind Ben Shapiro at the fucking failing Daily Wire, which we're going to be talking about in a second, looking for a documentary piece on men who claim to be women to beat people in athletic competitions, in specifically basketball or any sport, okay? Daily Wire, they tried to do this. And if you recall, as I do, there's video evidence for this. They talk about it openly. They couldn't find a single example in the real world of someone even coming near the I'm faking it for athletic competitions. Like, they couldn't find a real example of this to make a documentary around it. So they ended up making a work of fiction. The Fairly Wire movie on men playing women's basketball, that one was supposed to be a documentary. And they couldn't. Lady Ballers was supposed to be initially a documentary. They couldn't fucking find someone to do it. They couldn't even pay someone to do it. So they made a fictional movie about it. Now, in the process of trying to do this investigation, at a certain point, if you're an honest person, you realize, oh my God, we can't even pay someone to trans themselves. It kind of feels like this is not a real thing. And you just, at that point, you're supposed to stop. You're supposed to cease your investigations and perhaps make a documentary about how this is not a real problem. But because these people are not honest actors, because these people are simply invested in doing propaganda against 1% of the fucking population that's hurting no one, they double down by making a work of fiction. Anyway, I just get so annoyed when people make the same exact dumbass propaganda that gay people used to face in like the 90s and shit about how they're faking it for attention. But now they're doing it with trans people, which is even crazier than faking it for attention for gay people. Like, you're also simultaneously, like, you're like, you can just turn around and be like, I'm gay, okay? Even though no one is fucking faking it, obviously, for attention. You get no additional benefits on that part. But like, for faking being trans, like, there's a lot of work that goes into it, you know? And there's a fuck ton, just like faking being gay in the 90s would not give you any fucking societal advantages, and instead would unironically destroy your fucking life in a completely homophobic society. Faking being trans right now is just like putting you in the crosshairs of some of the worst people on the planet for no fucking reason. Who would do that? Who would do that for no reason?
That Laura Jane Grace coming out of the closet was like entirely fabricated and so on and so forth. But what's hilarious about this is that Tim is apparently such a fan, he's actually aware of this song, references it in his rant, and sort of like poo-poos the idea of that by saying this song must just be about either being gay or being about dating someone who's really fat and ugly.
The disc before the breakdown, where you're like, hey, it sounds like this dude's gay. No, I mean like literally, because like either he's dating someone who's ugly or fat, or he's singing about being gay, because it has the lyrics, I know they're going to laugh at us when they see us out together holding hands like this. They wouldn't understand it if we told them all the reasons. Pause.
You can't make this up. The guy is such a mealy-mouthed piece of shit. And look, I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I have like really truly loved a new album from Against Me. I haven't really dug much the band has done since like searching for a former clarity. And a lot of my reasoning comes down to the band mostly like adopting a more mainstream rock sound over the years. The idea that Against Me and Laura Jane Grace are like completely beyond listenability and fandom and respectability at this point because like they're just the biggest sellouts in rock and punk history is like complete bullshit. Like even the band's most mainstream sounding albums in their catalog don't even come close to sounding like radio rock or even like traditional commercial pop punk for that matter. In fact, I don't even think Laura or Against Me,
and I hope he mentions this, Tim Pool's music,
could even make that sort of album if they really wanted to. So the degree to which they can really even sell out on that front, I feel like is not even a reality. You may disagree with that personal assessment that I have. Certainly the opposite is arguable. However, I feel like the last person on the planet who should be making that argument is Tim fucking Pool. Because if Tim is going by the metric that Laura Jane Grace was at one time, like a really great underground hardcore singer-songwriter with anarchist leanings, and now she's like no longer fully that, and as a result she's a loser and a cretin and she shouldn't be taken seriously. Okay, if that is true of Laura Jane Grace, that applies 8, 10, 20 times for Tim fucking Pool, who apparently over here again is sitting here like a stan. I play all the songs on the guitar. Oh. So like, how deep into the ideological tank were you for every old school Against Me song? Probably more than even Laura Jane Grace was, and she wrote the fucking tracks. Like, in the grander scheme of things, the ideological shift that we're seeing in Laura Jane Grace as a singer and a songwriter over the course of Against Me 2002 to Against Me 2016 is like super gradual and even minimal in comparison to Tim Pool going from Against Me stan who knows all the songs on the guitar to Russian oligarch paid right-wing talking head freak who releases some of the worst music known to coming. Man under the title of his podcast. Tell me what to do instead of dreaming. And at the very least, I can
that's not enough. That's not enough. That's not enough. We need more. More! No, you're going to have to hear it. No, Anthony's being too nice. This is the classic goated one. Timcast only ever wanted official music video. I love that, like, this band resembles bands fallen out of their former glory. You know what I mean? Like, bands will break up, and then they'll, like, in an effort to make some money one last time, they'll like get back together and you'll see like the alcoholic divorced dads getting together for one last hurrah. These guys look like that, but they never even fell on. Like their starting position is like fell off band trying to restore its glory. It's crazy. How do you get here without falling on first?
Did you think I'd leave you there? Did you think I'd never keep my promise to? It's easy when I'm lying there with you, and every night I dream of you, and every night I promise to hold on to the dream I one day wake up next to you. Did you know you left me there, staring at the heartache in my soul as I fell to pieces into the one you're leaving for? There's only one thing I want you to know, is that I have found my peace here. Did you think I'd walk away? Did you think I'd break my promise now?
Oh my God, where's the fucking drop? That's like, it's 3 minutes of torment to get to the fucking drop, and the drop is still ass. It's crazy.
Damn, this guy's good.